and Momo stands. Put it this way, 24-year-old Bajina tells me, about 95% of the old government's time was spent on corruption and 5% of it doing work. The new government will probably become corrupt too, but most of their time will be spent actually helping us. A less corrupt government, it doesn't seem like a cause for celebration, but Bajina and her friends still seem elated. It's Nepal's recent history that makes this moment feel monumental to the voters I've met across the country. The elections have put an end to decades of the same three political parties ruling Nepal, bargaining for power in a revolving door of fragile government coalitions. And it didn't come easy. Bajina and her friends all took part in the Gen Z protests in September against years of perceived arrogance and corruption. When the first gunshot was fired, Arvash remembers, it became violent. Our team visited a hospital in the capital to meet Rakesh Mahto, also 24, who is one of those who paid a very steep price for this new political era in Nepal. Rakesh comes out of the building to meet us, in a hat and hoodie, and in a wheelchair. A few of my friends were shot, he tells me. I was trying to save one of them from behind a barricade. Then I was also shot. More than 5 months later, he's still in recovery. He says that he didn't have the money to leave the hospital and travel to vote. I would have voted for Balin. If the country still doesn't change, then I don't know what will work, he says. I kept hearing these high expectations as our team travelled across Nepal on the campaign trail. People of all generations are desperate for change. That was reflected in the election results. It was a landslide victory for the Rastriya Swatantra Party, also known as RSP, 4 years old and made up of many fresh faces. 35-year-old Balendra Shah is one of their senior leaders and beat the former Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli in his own constituency, previously a stronghold for Oli. With just 3 years' experience serving as the mayor of Kathmandu, Balin is known here for his trademark black suits and sunglasses and his rap lyrics that took aim at Nepal's political elite. The words "he's like us" were often repeated by the young Nepalis I met. They see him as their voice, someone who will hold the powerful accountable for years of corruption and the violence last year. Balin and his party have promised they'll form a commission to investigate the assets of powerful politicians dating back to the 90s and act on a report into the protests. But while there's much hope placed on the party, for some it's too early to celebrate. The RSP and its members are an untried generation in a system used to favours and political patronage. One constitutional expert I met worried that with a weak opposition, perhaps these new politicians will develop the same old habits. They all come from different walks of life and might develop their own ambitions very quickly, Bipin Adhikari tells me. He says one hope is that a free press could keep the government in check. So far the signs aren't that encouraging. Balin is known for mostly avoiding journalists, even as mayor. I run up to him multiple times in different cities, and he's always stormed past me and other media. Local journalists are worried this will continue once he's in office. But Nepalis feel that years of the same familiar faces have delivered very little for their country. Youth unemployment is at about 20%, among the highest in South Asia. Millions of Nepalis have to seek work abroad. How can they not want radical change at the top? And despite some worries about the future, Gen Z Nepalis have proven they can change their country. As in Bangladesh, it's their generation that overthrew a government and triggered historic elections. As an Iranian covering both these events in South Asia, I couldn't help but think of Iran, another country where young people have kept rising up and been met with devastating consequences. Here in Kathmandu, one 18-year-old first-time voter texted me after the polls, saying simply, "Gen Z are the decision-makers now." Many of the Nepalis I've met have fought and earned something coveted around the world: hope.
Azadeh Moshiri. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope. Thank you for listening. You can hear more of the stories behind the world's headlines by searching for From Our Own Correspondent on bbc.com. And we'll be back next weekend, so do join us again then, here on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme. Good morning, Manitoba, and hello there, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we're live downtown with our team in our Studio 15 on Portage Ave. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully you had a great weekend. And we're going to have lots of sunshine today, I tell you, but it will feel really cold. High of -12, wind chill -31 in Winnipeg. Right now we're sitting around -19, and it's going to be pretty cold, actually, in other parts of the province as well. So Brandon, mainly sunny, high -12, wind chill -33, pretty much the same as Winnipeg. And then up in Thompson today, expecting a bit of a different situation. Sunny and, only slightly different, actually. Your high's right around -13 as well. So similar day, I should be saying, across the province. We're the warm spot, by the way, at -19, though. It tells you how cold it is out there. -38's the cold spot at Lynn Lake. The morning show is on until 8:37. Mr. Darren Marash is your producer on YouTube. There he is. Hey, Darren. There's May McKillop behind the controls, filling in for Abby today. Hi, May. As well, we have Sierra Sanders, who's in directing the program, and she'll be on the air covering some of your commute information this morning. All right, let's get into what's happening in the news. 2 minutes to 6 o'clock. Heather Wells, what's leading this morning?
Well, good morning. And, the system used to estimate ER wait times in Winnipeg hospitals has been giving the wrong data. A memo to hospital staff in February says information shown online and at waiting room displays was at times, quote, quite inaccurate. It says health officials have spent months trying to fix the issue with the vendor. So we'll hear more about that. As well, Manitoba's trade rep to the United States is making even more money than the province had previously disclosed. Richard Madden's annual consulting fee, $482,000. That's according to Freedom of Information. And we're going to hear some reaction to that in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, the Oscars were handed out last night. There was a lot of Canadian content in terms of people to cheer for that won. We're going to hear that coming up on World Report. And then we'll get some more analysis of the big night, fashion, all the big moments, all of that. Also in the first hour of the program, Science Camp for Dancers. We have our parenting columnist on this hour talking about planning low-stakes activities for kids this summer and maybe even this upcoming spring break. So that's coming up in just a few weeks here in Manitoba. And that column's coming up in, the next hour of the show. Right now, though, World Report at the top of the clock.
Today on Q.
I'm Garvey Bailey, in for Tom Power. Hanumankind broke out globally with his 2024 hit Big Dogs, but his story started much earlier, from open mics in Kerala to signing with Def Jam India. Now he's on his first North American tour, and he'll be here to talk about putting Indian hip-hop on the map.
Wait a minute, get it how you live it. Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Countries are responding to Donald Trump's appeal for help in the Strait of Hormuz, but their reply may not be what the U.S. president wants. Trump is warning it would be very bad for the future of NATO if allies do not help secure the critical shipping route. The CBC's chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault, joins us from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Adrian, how are countries responding to Trump's call?
Well, he's put out a few signals in the last 24 hours. One, that he's looking for some countries to help along Iran's shore. He told the Financial Post that he, quote, wanted people who are going to knock out some bad actors that are along the shore. And then there are these 7 countries he's effectively looking for help with the strait itself, basically saying, you need that strait more than we do. You need to help reopen it. We're always coming to NATO's aid. And I said you wouldn't be there when we need you, and so I'm pessimistic you will help. And really, already we are hearing from a few of those countries, Japan, Australia, that they don't have plans to send ships to secure the Strait of Hormuz right now. The president has also said he wants China to contribute to opening the strait, since about 90% of its oil goes through there, and that he might delay his trip to China if it doesn't happen. The thing is, Chinese ships don't have an issue going through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been letting them through, has let some Indian vessels through, is now saying that countries that want to approach it and have a conversation, whatever that ends up looking like, can maybe go through.
Adrian, this war is playing out on so many fronts. What is the latest?
I think, unfortunately, there are patterns to this war. They're repeating daily this seemingly steady attempt to wear down the other, if you will. So we're keeping an eye on Lebanon this morning. Israel says it's begun a limited and targeted ground operation in the south of that country. The language Israel is using is of A forward defensive maneuver is what they're calling it. But how targeted, how limited will be the questions today. And from our vantage point here in Saudi Arabia, it's been a few hours of very heavy drones and interceptions in the east. The kingdom is very tight-lipped on whether there's been damage, and we see really very little indication of it, but certainly the volume appears to be increasing.
That is the CBC's chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault, in Riyadh. Donald Trump is also threatening to delay a summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping if Beijing does not help secure the Strait of Hormuz. China's foreign ministry is pushing back. It says head of state diplomacy plays an irreplaceable strategic guiding role in China-U.S. relations. Beijing is feeling the squeeze from the war in Iran. Not only is it a major buyer of Iranian oil, countries in the Middle East are also huge consumers of Chinese goods. Many of the Chinese exporters serving the region are located in Yiwu. The CBC's Lisa Xing is there.
The city of Yiwu is home to the world's largest wholesale market for small commodities. Tens of thousands of vendors sell everything from electronics to toys to jewelry. Their biggest clients, countries in the Middle East, including Iran.
Middle East customer is our old friend.
Flanked by a wall full of different styles of safety shoes at her showroom, Suad Ding is worried. 70% of the exporter's business comes from that region, but now shipping costs are 4 to 5 times more than before the war.
New Year, we have 3 containers from the customer is Egypt, now still in my warehouse.
The war on the other side of the world felt intimately here, not just in the rising costs of shipping and goods, but materials like plastics. Despite the worries, there's also optimism for the long term. Li Ye is the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce for the Northeast region of China. As long as we are not participating in the war, our products are liked by everyone and the price is relatively cheap, he says. Li is confident the sellers here will bounce back. Many, like Ding, are finding customers from other countries like Argentina, and he says they've weathered conflicts before and doubts this time will be different. Lisa Xing, CBC News, Yiwu, China.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is wrapping up his latest international trip in London. He was welcomed to 10 Downing Street by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer this morning. They discussed the situation in the Middle East and condemned Iran's missile and drone attacks, including on civilian and energy infrastructure. They also talked about concerns regarding rising energy prices and the broader economic consequences of the conflict. After today, Carney will be taking a vacation, but the Prime Minister says he will stay in close contact with his staff, monitoring the situation in the Middle East. About 3% of people who give birth in Canada experience severe complications. Almost 1/3 of those cases happen within 6 weeks of leaving the delivery room. The new research is published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. And as Tashana Reid reports, it suggests better postpartum care could help women avoid hospitalization, long-term disability, and even death.
It's just the worst pain you could ever imagine.
Paige Eaton of Kitchener, Ontario, knew something was wrong after her emergency C-section in 2023. She had a fever and chills, but was reassured by her care team it was normal. Days later, she was readmitted to hospital with a serious wound infection. It progressed into septic shock.
It's really hard to describe the pain of sepsis unless you've been through it. You feel like you're going to die.
Canadian researchers analyzed data from more than 1 million births in Ontario between 2012 and 2021. They found that 30% of severe complications like sepsis, preeclampsia, and hemorrhage occurred in the 6 weeks after birth, a period most surveillance studies don't capture.
We were missing 85% of the cases of obstetric sepsis because we were not looking closely at this 6 weeks postpartum period.
Julia Maraca is a senior author and associate professor at McMaster University. The research also found other factors contributed to a higher likelihood of complications, like being over the age of 40 or having a pre-existing condition like diabetes.
What these higher rates often reflect is differences in access to care, different social conditions.
Researchers say the findings highlight the need for better follow-up care and support in the postpartum period. As for Paige, she had emergency surgery, followed by weeks of IV antibiotics and at-home nursing care.
Listen to your body, listen to yourself. and advocate for yourself.
She hopes sharing her story can help others. Tashana Reed, CBC News, Toronto.
A breakthrough by scientists in New Brunswick is helping fight a deadly oyster disease. Since it was detected 2 years ago, MSX has cost the Atlantic shellfish industry millions. But now researchers have mapped its genome. As the CBC's Caitlin Beliveau reports, harvesters hope it helps the industry bounce back.
I have a specific memory of us high-fiving and taking a picture and being extremely ecstatic.
It took 7 months and 17,000 oyster samples, but scientists in southern New Brunswick have done what no one else could.
Yes, this is kind of breakthrough, I would say. Nobody has ever sequenced MSX genome.
Rebecca Liston and Atik Rehman isolated a single cell from MSX, a parasite that's killing oysters from New Brunswick to Newfoundland. The parasite isn't harmful to humans, but it has a mortality rate of up to 95% for oysters. The oyster industry in New Brunswick is worth $24 million a year, according to Statistics Canada. And pulling up dead oysters has put harvesters' livelihoods at risk. The problem was little was known about the rapidly spreading disease until now.
But we need to breed the ones that are resistant. This tool will help us locate the ones that are resistant.
The information will help harvesters alter their genetic code for generations to come. And that's music to Serge Leblanc's ears.
We're all hoping that it's going to come back to the way it was, because we had a very promising industry.
Leblanc is a biologist and oyster harvester on New Brunswick's east coast. He says it will take years to rebuild the oyster population, but the science is promising.
It helps to give us some hope.
The goal is that other scientists and policymakers will build off of their work. Caitlin Beliveau, CBC News, Moncton.
Canadian filmmakers are celebrating a successful night at the Academy Awards. The Oscar for Best Animated Short Film went to The Girl Who Cried Pearls. In their acceptance speech, directors Chris Lavis and Maciek Szyrbowski heaped praise on Montreal.
We just really want to thank our amazing neighborhood and the amazingly talented community of artists that we've had the superb luck to work with. Thank you, the fantastic city of Montreal. Thank you, Canada.
Korean-Canadian filmmaker Maggie Kang won Best Animated Feature for teen favorite K-pop Demon Hunters. And multiple Oscars were awarded to the artists who worked on Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein for production design and makeup and hairstyling. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. Going to be sunny and brisk today across most of the province, in fact. Thanks for joining us. You're on CBC's morning show, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app, or maybe you're watching on YouTube. Hello. This hour on the program, we're going to talk about how the city is planning to use chemical pesticides to manage ground squirrels. This has been an ongoing story we've been covering here at CBC. So they have made a decision about what they're doing. Some of the environmentalists in the city and others are not happy. We're going to hear from one of those people. In addition, you just heard about the Oscars a little bit on World Report, but let's talk more.
The Oscar goes to...
We're going to hear who the Oscar went to, but also we'll talk about who got snubbed, who didn't get an Oscar last night, and a little bit about the fashion as well. So stay tuned. It's kind of the post-Oscar conversation we have every year, right? Let's get into what's going on in the news this morning in Manitoba. Heather Wells joins us. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the system behind wait time estimates at emergency departments in Winnipeg has been giving the wrong data. An internal memo in February to hospital staff across Winnipeg says there were multiple flaws making estimates, quote, quite inaccurate. The memo says those flaws have been addressed, including an unexplained problem that led to patients being undercounted at night. So we're going to hear more about this. Also, animal rights activists are appealing the province's decision to allow Winnipeg to use 2 pesticides to control ground squirrels. Manitoba's Environment Branch has given the city a green light to kill the rodents at 9 sports fields with deadly bait and an asphyxiant foam. So we'll hear a reaction to that coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
And to set that conversation up, as I mentioned, we're going to have a first look at that story in a few minutes here. Let's look at the forecast first. So minus 19 right now downtown. Quite a difference. I don't always mention both temperatures, but the airport right now is minus 27. So I will mention that. There may be something wrong with their reading station, though. I'm just cautioning because that's 8 degrees difference. That's quite unusual. But it is minus 19 downtown. That's the warm spot in the province. Winds are calm, and Winnipeg today is going to be minus 12 with wind chill minus 31. Tons of sunshine. I'll take you around the province real quick because it's our first look, and it's easy. Brandon's the same as Winnipeg. High minus 12, feeling like minus 33. You're going to be sunny today. You're sitting right now at minus 25. And then even up in Thompson, a similar forecast today. So you right now have sunshine expected, a high of minus 13. And with wind chill, it's going to feel like minus 22. So pretty much the same daytime highs across the province in the main cities. Thompson's clear right now, though, and you're sitting at minus 32. So that is the weather. Let's get into your morning commute. Sierra Sanders is directing the show and is in now with some details. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. I will say I can't wait to put my winter jacket away.
I know.
I'm
People
waiting.
are dragging through March. Yep.
I agree. The one thing that is not dragging so far is the commute. It's looking pretty smooth so far as we kick off the show and as people start to wake up. But if something does pop up and is getting in your way and is causing some backups, I'd love to hear about it. Whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in the province, I'd love to know what you're seeing out there so I can let your fellow commuters know and listeners know. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
Sierra's right. The sun sure is teasing us right now, right? Looks like spring's staying later. It's light out, and then you walk outside and go, oh, hang on. Still cold. Well, next in the show, let's kind of set up what is happening with this ground squirrel situation before we hear more about that appeal to this decision in the news. The city of Winnipeg does have approval to use pesticides now to manage the ground squirrel populations. Those chemicals, as Heather mentioned, are going to be used in 9 parks and athletic fields. Some were forced to close down in previous years because of the number of those creatures, according to the city. The use of the products will begin this spring. Now, while some are happy about the decision, others are shaking their heads. James Hare is a professor of biological sciences at the University of Manitoba. He's been on our program before talking about how there are other ways to deal with this, and he was hopeful the city might choose one of those. He has studied ground squirrels for over 30 years. Here's his conversation over the weekend with CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco.
I am disappointed and, in fact, shocked in particular that the Environmental Approvals Branch decided to permit the city to use Rosol in particular, the anticoagulant bait.
I don't know if you can just recap to me what both of them do once they are introduced into the environment.
Absolutely. My first concern is that the proposed pesticides are inhumane. The Rosol in particular, this first generation anticoagulant, takes days to cause death among these animals. So they suffer a death, because of the inability to coagulate blood. They bleed out essentially. So it's just an agonizing and prolonged death that takes days. And of course, that leads to the second concern as well, that it ends up causing collateral damage to non-target species. And ironically, in some sense, Santiago, and maybe I didn't emphasize this enough in the previous interview, it essentially kills many of the predators that normally kill ground squirrels and keep ground squirrels in check. So, it kind of, defeats the purpose in its own sense because, those predatory species sometimes consume the baits themselves, but indirectly ingest the chlorphacinone, the anticoagulant, by consuming the carcasses of the squirrels, right, that are killed. And yes, the permit, does have provisions for having to pick up carcasses and whatnot, but they aren't there as these animals are dying, right? In the instance they're passing away. And so, many of them are scavenged by various predators. And of course, they then ingest the chlorphacinone and themselves die as a result of that. Not to mention, beyond, the predators, all sorts of other non-target wildlife species. Various bird species are killed by this that, aren't predators of ground squirrels, but they're killed. People's pets, right? Cats, dogs, are also killed by ingestion. And yes, it is, a fairly slow acting, because it takes long for the animals to die. If your pet ingests it and you notice any symptoms such as any bleeding or diarrhea, that kind of thing, you can take them to the vet and they can be treated with massive doses of vitamin K1, right, that acts as a way to promote the formation of clotting factors that that chlorophacinone acts as an antagonist of. But by the same token, people's pets do die as a result of this being released into the environment. So the anticoagulant bait, I mean, it's just not on. And I'm actually really surprised that the environmental approvals branch of Environment and Climate Change Manitoba, that is charged with balancing, yes, the social and economic needs of Manitobans with the protection of biodiversity in our province, actually allows this to be used, because it does nothing to protect biodiversity at all. In fact, it's totally detrimental to that. So I was really surprised by that decision, particularly since myself and Caitlin Mitchell, who's the Director of Legal Advocacy for Animal Justice, actually were able to meet with the Director of the Environmental Approvals Branch, as well as representatives from the livestock, agriculture, and pesticide section of that branch back in February. And we discussed the harms that this could cause. And so I was surprised that they approved it. Obviously, Rocon, the other substance, which is a suffocant foam, basically, that has mild mustard in it, and it's pumped into the burrows, that isn't as concerning in terms of collateral damage. It is also of concern, though, from that perspective of promoting a humane, death of the species you're trying to control. And again, I certainly understand how you cannot have, Richardson's ground squirrels burrowing into athletic fields that people are running and children are playing on. But by the same token, you should be using more humane methods.
So we will hear in the news how the city's decision is now being appealed. So we'll hear more about that coming up at 6:30. That was James Hare, though, over the weekend, weighing in, talking to CBC Santiago Arias Orozco about his reaction to Winnipeg using pesticides for ground squirrels. Now, he's a professor of biological sciences over at the University of Manitoba. We do have a statement from the city to read as well. They said, quote, ground squirrels are common in Winnipeg and cause a problem for parks maintenance and usership. They dig holes that destroy athletic fields and other green spaces. The holes pose a safety hazard for pedestrians and field users. These treatments, which are used in most major prairie cities, pose limited risk to other animals and humans. As part of their use, we will monitor treatment sites daily and promptly remove any dead animals. We will also place signage at the treatment site 24 hours in advance and keep it in place until 24 hours post-treatment, end quote. So as I mentioned, we'll hear more about an appeal in this case coming up at 6:30.
If it happened today, find out today. That's the power of having the news in your hand. Get late-breaking news from reporters across the country, straight to your mobile device. Customize your experience with news from your region and what matters to you. Whether it's big headlines, detailed articles, live events, or on-demand video, CBC News has got you covered. Connect to the world. Download the free CBC News app or visit cbcnews.ca.
6:20 is the time right now on 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Well, let's talk more about the Oscars. Hollywood's biggest night came to a close last night. 3.5 hours if you stayed up to watch the whole thing. The Academy handed out Oscars to the best films yesterday. Conan O'Brien was host. One Battle After Another and Sinners went in as two of the favorites for Best Picture. In the end, only one came out. Let's recap what we've heard already and then elaborate on the night with film critic and editor over at Acclaim Magazine. That's Rachel Ho. She's here to talk about the show. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So leading up to last night, if we take a step back, it was all about Sinners, as I mentioned, versus One Battle After Another. How'd that play out?
So Sinners was definitely the underdog of the situation, but I think as much as we thought there was a little sliver of hope that Sinners would pull through and take the big awards, I mean, we kind of knew One Battle After Another was going to come out on top, and indeed they did. They won 6 awards last night, like I said, the big guys as well. Best Picture, as well as Best Director. That being said, though, Sinners did really well. They won 4 awards, including Best Actor, which is the one that I was rooting for the most. I was really hoping for a Michael B. Jordan win. But one win from Sinners that I do want to highlight is Autumn Durald Archipaw's win. Now, she won for Best Cinematography, and as Conan said during the ceremony, kind of astonishingly, in the 98 ceremonies that the Oscars have had, this is the first time that a woman has won in this category.
I'm so honored to be here, and I really want all the women in the room to stand up, because I feel like I don't get here without you guys.
So aside from that very historic win, surprisingly historic win, what the competition between Sinners and One Battle After Another underscored for me, both of them being Warner Brother Pictures, it was this idea that what do we have at stake here to lose when and if this acquisition of Warner Brothers actually eventually goes through from Starcom. It's original storytelling. It's bold storytelling. Both of these films had themes that really push the envelope, especially a film like Sinners. Who knows if this is going to get greenlit in the future? I hope it does. But again, it underscores what we possibly have to lose here.
And where's it going to be made if it's not going to get greenlit there is going to be, I guess, the question too, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Were any of the wins last night surprising to you?
Not really, to be honest with you. It was one of these award shows where every storyline played out how we thought it was going to play out. Even Michael B. Jordan winning, I don't think it was necessarily a surprise. I think we all knew he had a pretty good shot after the actor awards. Perhaps Best International Picture. Like I thought that Secret Agent was going to win. I really thought that they had it in the bag. Sentimental Value, though, great film. So it wasn't one of those big upset kind of nights. If you'd been following along for the awards season, I don't think anything really came as a surprise. It was a very satisfying ceremony, though. I will say that. That's the word I keep coming back to.
How did Canadians do? We've heard a bit of this on World Report, but I feel like there were more things to celebrate this morning in our country.
Oh, they did so well. Canada should be so proud this morning. Frankenstein was a big winner in terms of below-the-line awards, as we like to call them. And because Guillermo del Toro, he is basically an honorary Canadian at this point. He films a lot in Toronto specifically. He filmed Frankenstein there, and a lot of his crew are from Canada. Best production design, best makeup and hairstyling, those 2 awards went to Canadian artists, kind of unsurprisingly, because it's a Guillermo del Toro production. My favorite win, though, for Canadians was in the 2 animation categories. So this is something that I go on and on about quite a bit, which is I think that animation gets a bit of the short end of the stick. You know, when we talk about Canada's contributions to cinema, we often talk about documentary, we talk about comedy. Animation always gets left off the conversation, though, for some reason. And I think Maggie Kang winning for K-pop Demon Hunters, the NFB film The Girl Who Cried Pearls, won for the Best Animated Short. Those 2 films, personally for me, they felt very validating, those wins, that in just my little advocacy work for Canada, for Canadian animation.
How do you think Conan O'Brien did hosting?
I think he did such a great job. I'm a really big fan of Conan. I've been a fan of Conan since I was a kid. And I think he's a wonderful host. He was a great Emmys host. Now he's a great Oscars host. I think what makes him so good at this job is that even on the Oscar stage, which is like a bit of a grand stage, he still is Conan. He still does his little Conan bits. Like he had the orchestra, a member of the orchestra play on a prosthetic butt drum that he kept talking about. And it was a bit of a nod to Marty Supreme. A big thread throughout the evening, from his monologue through to all of his sketches, were the effects of tech firms coming into the movie industry. So he took a dig at Ted Sarandos, the Netflix CEO, pretty early on in the evening. Ted was in the audience. I'll give him credit. He was a very, very good sport about it. They took a little shot at YouTube ads interrupting the broadcast when they take over from ABC in a few years. My favorite of the bits, though, was this sketch that he did with Sterling K. Brown about how Netflix and other media companies as well have been dumbing down scripts to make plots super clear to audiences who are basically only half paying attention. They applied this treatment to Casablanca. We can have a listen here.
Casablanca with Conan O'Brien and Sterling K. Brown. All the gin joints, all the towns in all the world. She walks into mine.
She being Ilsa, right?
Yeah, that's her name.
Yeah, that's gotta be tough, because she ghosted you at that train station in Paris.
It definitely contributed to my overall cynicism, what with this being World War II and all.
I thought Conan just did such a great job with these little things. He's so quick on his feet as well. He's really adaptable. He also preempted some of the politics that were going to come up in the evening. You know, he joked about an alternative ceremony being hosted by Kid Rock at the Dave and Buster's down the road. So, you know, he did a wonderful job. He also had a little bit at the end about being Oscar host for life. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't be mad at that.
We're going to leave it there. Thanks for being with us, Rachel. Appreciate it.
No problem at all. Take care.
You too, especially after a late night watching the Oscars. Rachel Ho with us, film critic and editor at Exclaim. Can't resist. Here's a little K-pop Demon Hunters in Golden. If you're checking out all the feathery fashion for last night, I highly suggest doing a Google image search of the best and worst. Some good stuff out there.
I was a ghost, I was alone. 두어진 길 속에 Given the throne, I didn't know how to believe I was the queen that I'm meant to be. I lived two lives, tried to play both sides, but I couldn't find my own place. Caught a problem child, could've got too wild, but now that's how I'm getting paid. 끝없이 on stage, I'm done hiding, now I'm shining like I'm born to be. We dreaming hard, we came so far, now I believe. We're going up, 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 it's our moment. You know together we're going, gonna be golden. Up, up, up with our voices. You wanna get you so on it, gonna be golden. Oh, I'm done hiding, now I'm shining like I'm born to be. Oh, our time, no fears, no lies, that's who we're born to be. Waited so long to break these walls down, to wake up and feel like me. Put these patterns all in the past now, and finally live like the girl they all see. No more hiding, I'll be shining like I'm born to be. 'Cause we are hunters, voices strong, and I know I believe. We're going up, 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 it's our moment. You know together we're going, gonna be golden. Oh, up, up, up with our voices. You wanna get you so on it, gonna be golden. Oh, I'm done hiding, now I'm shining like I'm born to be. Oh, our time, no fears, no lies, that's who we're born to be. You know we're gonna be
Golden was golden last night, along with all those Golden Oscars. If you didn't check out the highlights, you can check them out all day online. Had to celebrate some of the Canadian contribution there with that tune, and with a win for, many wins for the Canadians last night. I love that tune. I know my teenage niece always rolls her eyes at me. He's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, really. I think it's an anthem for confidence. Coming up, we are going to talk about the business news. Christy Ramlichan's going to be here talking about oil prices and how high they are this morning, and also the effects that are cascading now, especially on small businesses. So stay tuned. Right now, your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:31, it is minus 19 in downtown Winnipeg. Much colder out at the airport, where the temperature is minus 27. And winter is just hanging on, just days away from the official start of spring. Today, a high of minus 12, but it will be sunny. Health officials say they have addressed multiple flaws that made ER wait times inaccurate. An internal memo sent out to hospital staff in Winnipeg last month says projections were based on old data, and officials spent months with the vendor working to improve them. Dr. Fahad Razak is Canada Research Centre chair in health care data analytics.
The alternative is not that you have some perfect way of doing it. The alternative is no information. So if I was a patient waiting in an emergency room, some information, even if it has some problems with accuracy from time to time, is better than not having it. So I think there's definitely an important role for these algorithms.
The province says it is monitoring the issue and will fix any problems as they're identified. Manitoba's trade rep to the United States is making more money than the province initially disclosed. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Former CTV and CBC reporter Richard Madden was named Manitoba's trade envoy to Washington back in June. At the time, he touted his connections in the U.S. Capitol.
I've covered Washington for almost a decade, so I know the players. I've got a fairly decent Rolodex.
The province said in October Madden was making $387,000 a year. According to his contract, obtained by CBC News through a Freedom of Information request, Madden earns an annual consulting fee of $482,000. With expenses, his total compensation can reach $533,000. Amy Tuckett-McGimpsey, a spokesperson for Premier Rob Canoe, described the lower compensation figure for Madden provided in the fall as a base salary. PC leader Robbie Khan called this spending by the NDP government concerning.
How can they justify paying someone $500,000 a year when Manitobans can't pay their bills?
Richard Madden declined to comment. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba has approved the use of 2 pesticides in Winnipeg to control ground squirrel population. As CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco tells us, animal rights advocates say the substances are inhumane and can put other animals at risk.
The city of Winnipeg says ground squirrel holes can be a safety hazard. Officials asked the province for permission to kill some rodents with a deadly bait and an asphyxiant foam. Approval was granted to use both pesticides at 9 fields this year. Biologist James Herr is disappointed.
It's not really going to be that effective, but it will cause animals to suffer.
Herr says it's hard for the foam to reach a deadly concentration inside the burrows, and with the bait, there are risk predators or pets could eat it by accident. That's alarming for the Winnipeg Humane Society.
They'd suffer the same painful symptoms and all the way could be leading right up to death that a ground squirrel would have.
A number of rules come with the pesticide permit, including a time limit for the baits used before new squirrels are born. The city plans to begin applying the pesticides in early spring. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
U.S. President Donald Trump is trying to assemble a coalition of allies to help secure the flow of oil from the Middle East as Iranian attacks make it more dangerous. Last night on Air Force One, Trump told reporters it is time for NATO countries to support the United States.
We're always there for NATO. We're helping them with Ukraine. It's got a notion in between us. Doesn't affect us, but we've helped them. It'd be interesting to see what country wouldn't help us with a very small endeavor, which is just keeping the strait open.
Trump suggesting such a mission would be easy because he says Iran has been weakened. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Mark Carney is wrapping up his latest international trip in London. Carney being welcomed to 10 Downing Street by British Prime Minister Keir Starmer earlier today. The two leaders spoke by phone yesterday and today are discussing the war in Iran and its effect on global trade. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 7. Well, the Winnipeg Jets seem to shine for afternoon games.
A shot, Fleury scores!
Hayden Fleury in the first period on TSN as the Jets hold off the St. Louis Blues 3-2. It is Fleury's first goal since December, and he says it felt good.
My son asks me every time I play, he's like, "You score?" And I always, no. So it'll be good to tell him I scored. He's here, so it's good.
Good for Dad. And it was a good weekend for Winnipeg, too. The Jets won both afternoon games. On Saturday, the Jets beat the Avalanche 3-1. So next up, Nashville is in town to wrap up the Jets' 8-game homestand. Nashville and the Jets tomorrow night. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
It's a tough little critic to have at home, eh?
No kidding. Did you score?
All right, then. Whatever. dad.
I love just his voice. You could hear like, oh, well.
I know. The best is too, and how excited he would have been to say, yes, ask me. All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into the regional forecast now. I'm going to deliver this today. So I was mentioning we have quite a difference in temperature in Winnipeg between downtown and the airport. Downtown still reporting minus 19. At the airport, the report of the temperature is minus 27, so quite a difference. But today we're going to be around minus 12 for the day. So let's start here in Winnipeg. Sunshine, minus 12. We'll feel like minus 31 with that wind chill. Tonight, clear, and then low minus 21. Increasing cloud overnight, though. And then tomorrow, that's going to bring us some snow and local blowing snow. So about 5 centimeters. And then winds are going to gust up to 40 and 60 in the morning from the south. So it's going to blow around a little bit. High minus 9 tomorrow in Winnipeg. Now, it gets warmer midweek for southern Manitoba at least. Well, for all of Manitoba, but quite warm for the south. We'll be at 2 degrees if the forecast holds by Wednesday. So we'll see how the week progresses. Brandon's very much the same as Winnipeg today. Mainly sunny. High minus 12 for you. Wind chill minus 33. Tonight, increasing cloud, low minus 19, but your temperature will rise by morning to about minus 15. You're also expecting snow in Brandon tomorrow early in the morning and a risk of freezing rain in the afternoon. So about 5 to 10 centimeters, gusty winds. And then once again by Wednesday in Brandon, you're looking at 1 degree if the forecast holds, so you'll be above zero as well. Finally, let's take you up north. I should mention, Brandon's minus 25 right now with a clear sky. Now let's go up north. It's clear and minus 35 in Thompson currently. For you today, sunny and also a high of minus 13. So one of those rare days where the whole province, north to south, seems to be pretty similar. So you'll have minus 13 today. Tonight, partly cloudy and becoming more cloudy overnight and a low minus 25. For you tomorrow, periods of snow also expected in the north, about 2 centimeters in Thompson, and your high tomorrow is going to be right around minus 13. I mentioned you'll also warm up by midweek in the north, just not quite above zero. Your high on Wednesday is looking like minus 7. It is time to check in on our morning commute and tee up where you should call and what's going on this Monday. Here's Sierra Sanders.
Hi, Marcy. It has been quiet so far on the commuter line. No calls coming in right now. So things are moving smoothly out there from the sounds of it, which is good news here on this Monday morning. Highways are also looking pretty clear. I took a quick look at Manitoba 511, and highways surrounding Winnipeg are looking quite nice. So that's also just a reminder to make sure to double check Manitoba 511 before you get out on the highways here. We know things can change here pretty quickly. But the number to call if something does pop up on your commute, whether you are here in the city or out on the highways, is 204-788-3093.
I have to shout out, on the weekend I went to MTC to see Rogers versus Rogers, which is about the telecom company and the family and the fallout. But on stage, there's only one actor, and this was the closing show of this, so the run is over for this. But it was Tom Rooney on stage. He played 17 different roles. It was
17.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And he would do things like, if he was going to be me, he would, hold a mug and then he'd turn into me. Put the mug down, maybe put a hat on and be you. But just those subtle little things that he was doing as he moved around. At one point, he was on a conference call with 10 people, and imagine he was all 10 people. It was wild the way they staged that.
That's crazy.
I know. They had his face sort of up on the main screen, and when he would change into different people, he would actually change behind the mic into the different people talking to one another.
You should do it. We could do a full interview of you just going back and forth, you being the interviewer and then the interviewee. I think it would work great.
No, that's next hour. We'll try that.
Let's do it.
There's no guest today.
No guest today. Actually, it's just Marcy.
We'll call Tom Rooney down here if we need to. Maybe he's still in town.
There we go.
Thanks, Sierra.
Thanks.
Well, we are going to throw to someone else because that would be just crazy if we tried to do it. But we have Crystalie Ramlakan here in person with us. Hi, Crystalie. Isn't that crazy, though?
That is such a wild concept.
I know.
And he must be such a talented actor to pull that off, and the little nuances, I'm sure, and the changes in his personality to signal that he was a different character.
For an hour and a half.
That's amazing.
For an hour and a half straight. It was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, so good. You are here to talk about Monday. Let's reset the week here. Oil prices remain high as the war in the Middle East enters its third week now. The effects are cascading. Today, I understand you're looking at small businesses.
Yes, that's right. So small businesses say high fuel costs are affecting them. The war has blocked the flow of ships through the Strait of Hormuz. About 1/5 of the world's oil supply travels through that waterway between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula on its way to the open seas and then to global customers. But with fuel not passing through that strait, crude has now soared to its highest price in years, and its derivatives, jet fuel, diesel, and gasoline, have also shot up significantly. So the increases have been hard to handle for all businesses, but especially small ones. They don't have the massive cash reserves or customer networks their larger counterparts often do. They are also still recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic and coping with the tariff war. So the Canadian Federation of Independent Business says some businesses are so weak, any increase in their costs makes more of them vulnerable to going out of business. And when the CFIB began surveying its members about a week into the Middle Eastern conflict, it found 80% of the roughly 1,200 respondents were worried the war was having repercussions for them.
To another story, we're about to get the latest look at how the economy is doing overall today. What can you tell us about it?
Yes, that's right. Fresh inflation numbers are expected from Statistics Canada today. So a Reuters poll predicts a drop in inflation for last month to 1.9% from the 2.3% that we saw in January. And the data will factor into the Bank of Canada's interest rate decision set for Wednesday. So the central bank held its key interest rate at 2.25% last month. And the bank will also consider the employment data that we saw on Friday, which showed the economy shed 84,000 jobs last month, driving the unemployment rate up. So economists said that report was, bad, but they do say the labor market softness should offset inflationary pressures from the spike in oil prices that we've seen, driven by, of course, the war in the Middle East.
And finally, before you go, we were just talking about the Oscars, films being celebrated last night in the big ceremony. Movie studios are finally buying into a staple, though, of internet culture, which promotes the movies that they make. What are the details here?
Yes, so as eyes turn from big screens to vertical video, of course, we're all looking at our phones. Movie studios are buying into these things called fan edits that help promote their films to younger generations. So the short videos made by fans string together clips of movies and shows, often using eye-catching transitions and evocative music. So movie studios are shifting their marketing practices and are actually hiring these young editors to make the videos now. So Lionsgate, HBO, and Netflix have all promoted fan edits in the last couple of years. The most popular ones can draw hundreds of millions of views on social media. And Lionsgate has been working with fan editors for years, but brought more attention to it recently, working with a team of at least 10 to 15 fan editors at a time as contractors. So the movie studio saw two of its franchises, Twilight and The Hunger Games, gain a second life, in part because of these edits. And even though studios don't want their content distributed for free, of course, and there is the issue of copyright, it's pretty hard to ignore the publicity from these fan edits.
I wonder if they're paid the same as what an editor would be to put out the same piece, that would garner that kind of marketing attention. That's going to be the next question journalistically, I think.
You know what? That is such a good question. And as I said, they're hiring them as contractors. So, often when you're hired as a contractor, that means that you don't get as many benefits and, all the perks of being a full-time employee. So, it's a really good question.
Yeah. Interesting, though, that they're finding another way. And of course, they're going to need to, because the Oscars are about to just be on YouTube, right? That's going to be the new thing next.
Yeah.
All right, Crystalie, thank you for setting up Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
Crystalie Ramlichan with our business news. Now, speaking of young filmmakers, in the next hour of Information Radio after 7 o'clock, we're going to hear the latest piece from a Sisler High School student who is, at Sisler High School studying the post-high school program in filmmaking. It's called Sisler Create. And we're going to hear from him and his mom, in fact, after 7 o'clock, because his latest piece of work, it's a short documentary, came out on our CBC website yesterday. You can check it out there, cbc.ca/Manitoba. But he and his mother joined me in studio to talk about with the content because he turned the camera on himself to come to terms with what he says was a turbulent childhood. And their story is coming up. The family's opening up to help inspire others who, as they put it, come from the north side of Winnipeg. All right, speaking of families, still ahead this half hour, we're going to talk about some planning. Maybe you're planning for something to do for spring break for the kids. That's coming up in a few weeks. Or maybe you're already thinking about summertime. So we're going to have our parenting column looking all at that. It is -19 in Winnipeg right now. Sky is clear. It's going to be sunny this Monday. We've got some music to ease you in from Noah Dirksen, who describes his mood as rooted in the small moments of everyday life. And don't we all know it's always the little things that make all the difference. This is a brand new tune, backed by fellow Winnipegger Fontaine. This is Noah Dirksen and Walking Home on CBC.
Well, the springtime moon is rising soon, and it lights my path through these crooked streets and the people I meet along the river edge. You see, I've walked this road about 1,000 times, and it's always the same. There's some young punk kid who's trying to pick a fight, but I can understand. You gotta hold the ground that you were standing on. You gotta live it hard or you ain't living long. Yeah, I'm walking home, walking home. I see ghosts of old lovers on the sidewalk. I can hear them talk about their lovers new. But I can see it now, just how the world goes round. You ain't got nothing to choose. And then a young punk kid just keeps on lipping me off like he's got something to prove. My high school walls where I learned to lose, and I taught myself to see. I'm walking home, walking home. Yeah, I'm walking home, walking home. Yeah, walking home, walking home.
Noah Dirksen and Walking Home. Also heard the lovely voice of Fontaine blending into his. Noah says life's about being in community. He wants his music to be a reflection of that. And nice that they're both from our community in Winnipeg.
Are you responsible for the life of a tiny human? It's a lot, we know. Try a more zen approach with CBC Gem. It has your little one's best friends like Peppa Pig, Paw Patrol, Daniel Tiger, Dino Ranch, and more. Our shows are calm, fun, and educational. Best of all, it's totally free, and kids watch without any ads. Watch free on CBC Gem. And exhale.
Well, if you're planning for your little ones and summertime planning, a lot of the registrations and such open in April. That's just a few weeks away. I was looking at a big list actually online of the different things you can sign up for. Of course, some of the planning is already starting though right now. It might seem like a distant dream, but summer is coming. For parents, it does mean that you're about to get into the Hunger Games style scramble for some camp registrations and spots. And also, maybe you're looking at the sheer logistics of travel. It's meant to be a season of relaxation, but it often can turn into a stressful second full-time job. Maybe you can avoid it this year. Let's get some help from our parenting columnist, Bear Bergman. Good morning.
Good morning.
So it feels like a lot of people are looking for the right balance when it comes to summer planning. Why do you think, despite people's best intentions, it's just so hard?
Well, let's see. First of all, you have to figure out per child, and depending on how, what your kids are like, it's not going to be the same. How much structure they need so that they're not lying on the kitchen floor complaining there's nothing to do, but, how to make it unstructured enough so they feel like they got time off. You have to get them to tell you what they want to do and which friends they want to do it with. Hope the answer's the same in July. Hope there's spots. Hope it doesn't cost $1 million, and then somehow convince your mother, who has been saying for 6 months that she really wants the kids for a week during the summer vacation, to please tell you which week. But other than that, it's easy.
Okay, is this a parenting columnist? Or are you just getting some therapy? Are you okay?
I am, I think that's a fair question, but I have to say, I say it like that for two reasons.
Yeah.
One, because a lot of people listening think to them, really feel validated when you lay out all the reasons why it's hard.
100%.
But also, there are plenty of parents whose co-parent are doing that job and who are saying, I don't know why it's so hard, just put them in camp, whatever. And I want them to hear it and realize, oh, actually, there is a lot going on. And if I'm not going to take on part of the work, then maybe I should at least be more supportive, because it is actually a lot to do.
Yeah, it is a lot to do. So when you think about kids and you're talking about sort of finding the balance between them lying on the floor and being overscheduled, do you worry about that? Trying to build in relaxation as well and finding that balance?
I do. I think, we all worry about our kids being overscheduled, but also in a lot of households, every relevant adult is working. So I do try to give my kids unscheduled time, but I also try to coordinate with the parents of their friends so that multiple of the kids are having unscheduled time at the same time. Because, it's a real bummer if you want to ride bikes to the park and all your friends are busy, right? Like, having nothing to do with your friends, that's a real pleasure. Having nothing to do by yourself, that's a one-way ticket to the iPad and more complaining. Maybe for kids and adults, to be honest. So I say yes to trying to do a little unscheduling, and also with a little coordination. I think it's a lot more fun.
It's interesting because I understand with the camps, like with the more structured things that you are going to sign your kids up for, one of your suggestions is to let them spread their wings in a different way. So the dance kid won't take dance camp. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's really nice to have some novelty, especially for a kid who, I think it's great when they've found their passion and there's an activity that they want to do over and over during the year. But it contributes, I think, to that sense of being off in the summer when they can do an activity where nobody's like monitoring to see if they're improving or if it's time to move them to the next level. So, soccer kid, let them take a cooking class, let them bake cookies, and, maybe they'll find a new thing they like. But if nothing else, I think it really contributes to that sense of being off in the summer when you can shake up the schedule.
That's smart, actually. That's really good advice. What about family trips? Any hack for those that are getting in a car?
I do love a family road trip, I have to be honest. I think it's a good time to, start getting your kids to help with both the prep and the planning. And I think the planning part is how they feel more excited about it and less like they're being, dragged behind the wagon. Let them pick some stuff to do, whether that's which board games you're bringing or, what breakfast restaurant you want to try. When you have a little more time, maybe in the summer, it's also a nice time to help them learn some of the prep skills, like packing their own suitcase. Give them a list. Let them give it a try. Although, let me just, as a person who's found myself more than once at 7 a.m. at the Walmart buying socks and underwear in a strange town for a child who packed only stuffed animals and comic books, just take a peek in that suitcase before you leave. Like, yes, let's scaffold them into skills, but also let's backstop them.
Why would you prioritize underwear when you could have room for 3 stuffies, Bear? Come on now.
I mean, I understand the impulse for sure. Like, who wouldn't? But also, I do have some feelings about clean socks at least every other day, even in the summer.
Check the suitcase. All right, thank you.
Thanks so much.
That's Bear Bergman, father of 3, author of Special Topics and Being a Parent, a Queer and Tender Guide to Things I've Learned About Parenting, mostly the hard way. It is 3 minutes now to 7 o'clock. Coming up on the program here on CBC on Information Radio after 7, a student filmmaker turns the camera on himself and his mother to come to terms with his own story. It's raw, it's real, it's rarely heard. A young man and his mom sharing with CBC why they appear in this student film to talk about overcoming a difficult life in the city's North End, but also where they are now. So we will hear more about that after 7 o'clock. In addition, in the next hour of the show, the Canadian government wants your input right now to help develop a national men's health strategy. We're going to hear more from a doctor who opened Canada's first clinic focused on health issues unique to men here in Winnipeg. So we're going to hear more in an interview coming up at 7:40. Traffic-wise, it should be pretty good out there this morning. If you do see a problem, it's regular spring driving. You're going to have all those ruts out there. It's going to be a little icy here or there where you're walking because you've got the back and forth of the pavement versus the ice. And on the highways, you may have some partly covered conditions depending on where you're at. So check 511 before you're out. Give us a call if you have a problem. 788-3093. In the weather forecast, minus 19 in Winnipeg's downtown. Our high is going to be right around minus 12. Lots of sunshine, and it's going to be brisk and cold because with wind chill, it'll feel like minus 31. This afternoon, though, with all that sun, it should feel a little bit nicer for us. Then it'll clear tonight before a bit of snow moves in for tomorrow. Brandon's minus 25 and clear. Thompson's minus 35 and clear right now. Heather Wells is in now with a look at what's happening in our headlines this morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the system behind wait time estimates at emergency departments has been giving the wrong data. An internal memo in February to hospital staff across Winnipeg says there were multiple flaws, making estimates, quote, quite inaccurate. The memo says multiple flaws have been addressed, including an unexplained problem that led to patients being undercounted at night. So we'll hear more about that. And Manitoba's trade rep to the United States is making even more money than the province has disclosed initially. Richard Madden's annual consulting fee is $482,000 Canadian. More reaction to that in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
We'll also have some more detail on that story in the next hour as well on the show here. CBC's Bartlett Kivas is going to join us. Stay with us right now, though, because the latest in national and international news is coming up at the top of your clock. It's 1 minute to 7 o'clock right now. And World Report is next on CBC.
Today on The Current.
As cheesy as it sounds, I went into medicine because I wanted to make the world a better place.
Dr. Joss Reimer was a voice of calm during the pandemic as the head of Manitoba's COVID vaccine task force. Now she's taking on the job of Canada's top doctor at a time when public health is facing attacks and needs to rebuild trust. Dr. Joss Reimer coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald.
Countries are responding to Donald Trump's appeal for help in the Strait of Hormuz. But their reply may not be what the U.S. president wants. Trump is warning it will be very bad for the future of NATO if allies do not help secure the critical shipping route. The CBC's chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault, joins me now from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Adrian, this call from Donald Trump, he seems very determined. What else did he say?
U.S. President Donald Trump has put out a few signals here. He said he's looking for a few countries to help along Iran's coast, saying he wanted people who are going to knock out some bad actors along the shore. So that sounds like he knows there will be Iranian forces on the coastline to deal with, and he's adamant other countries must help clear the Strait of Hormuz. He's been angry they aren't, says the U.S. is always there for NATO. It will be bad for NATO if it's not there now. But now we're hearing from UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer that clearing the strait will not be a NATO mission. Italy and Germany say there's no reason to do it, a no from Australia. Japan is not going to do it at this point either. So who joins and what they do, if they do join, is still very unclear. The U.S. President, incidentally, first called this war a small excursion. He's now called clearing the Strait of Hormuz a small endeavor. And the problem is, at this point, there doesn't seem to be anything small about it.
Adrian, this war is playing out on so many fronts. What is the latest?
I think, unfortunately, there are patterns to this war. They're repeating daily this seemingly steady attempt to wear down the other, if you will. So we're keeping an eye on Lebanon this morning. Israel says it's begun a limited and targeted ground operation in the south of that country. The language Israel is using is of a forward defensive maneuver, is what they're calling it. But how targeted, how limited will be the questions today. And from our vantage point here in Saudi Arabia, it's been a few hours of very heavy drones and interceptions in the east. The kingdom is very tight-lipped on whether there's been damage, and we see really very little indication of it, but certainly the volume appears to be increasing.
That is the CBC's chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault, in Riyadh. Prime Minister Mark Carney is in the United Kingdom on the final leg of an overseas tour. He's already discussed Arctic security with Nordic leaders in Oslo. Today, wars in the Middle East and Ukraine dominate the agenda. The CBC's Murray Brewster is traveling with the Prime Minister.
Prime Minister Mark Carney, outside of 10 Downing Street, not taking any questions. Inside, the pleasantries and a personal touch from British Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
It's really good to have you. Happy birthday. Thank you. For today.
Today is Carney's 61st birthday, a moment of levity before serious discussions. Starmer's office says he's spoken to U.S. President Donald Trump about the importance of reopening the Strait of Hormuz to end the disruption to global shipping and the oil crisis. But neither he nor Carney mentioned the war in the Middle East as they posed for photos before the meeting. However, officials say they did discuss it behind closed doors, and both men expressed deep concern about the toll the war is taking on civilians and the risk that it could escalate. Canada's new High Commissioner in London, former Cabinet Minister Bill Blair, says it's important the two prime ministers have an opportunity to discuss each country's approach.
I think those conversations could lead to, perhaps a better understanding and other discussions about not only how we deal with the conflict that's currently raging in the Middle East, but how we deal with the economic fallout.
Carney has made it clear Canada is not participating in the U.S.-Israeli-led war, but has not excluded so-called defensive measures. Murray Brewster, CBC News, London.
Statistics Canada is set to release fresh inflation numbers this hour. That data will factor into the Bank of Canada's next interest rate decision on Wednesday. About 3% of people who give birth in Canada experience severe complications. Almost one-third of those cases happen within 6 weeks of delivering. The new research is published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal. And as Tishana Reid reports, it suggests better postpartum care could help women avoid hospitalization, long-term disability, and even death.
It's just the worst pain you could ever imagine.
Paige Eaton of Kitchener, Ontario, knew something was wrong after her emergency C-section in 2023. She had a fever and chills, but was reassured by her care team it was normal. Days later, she was readmitted to hospital with a serious wound infection. It progressed into septic shock.
It's really hard to describe the pain of sepsis unless you've been through it. You feel like you're going to die.
Canadian researchers analyzed data from more than 1 million births in Ontario between 2012 and 2021. They found that 30% of severe complications like sepsis, preeclampsia, and hemorrhage occurred in the 6 weeks after birth, a period most surveillance studies don't capture.
We were missing 85% of the cases of obstetric sepsis because we were not looking closely at this 6 weeks postpartum period.
Julia Maraca is a senior author and associate professor at McMaster University. The research also found other factors contributed to a higher likelihood of complications, like being over the age of 40 or having a pre-existing condition like diabetes.
What these higher rates often reflect is differences in access to care, different social conditions.
Researchers say the findings highlight the need for better follow-up care and support in the postpartum period. As for Paige, she had emergency surgery, followed by weeks of IV antibiotics and at-home nursing care.
Listen to your body, listen to yourself and advocate for yourself.
She hopes sharing her story can help others. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
The artificial intelligence boom is creating a global shortage of RAM memory chips. It's causing price surges across the tech sector. Experts say the problem is being felt everywhere. Abby Cole tells us how it's affecting companies in Newfoundland and Labrador.
You're going to see more expensive notebooks. You're going to see more expensive office servers and what have you, even in your phone.
Willie Shee is a Harvard Business School professor. His warning comes as AI companies scramble to build data centers that require a ton of RAM because supply isn't keeping up with demand, and the cost of random access memory is skyrocketing.
This AI boom and this construction of all these new data centers is just soaking up all the supply of memory.
St. John's-based IT company Triware Technologies is feeling the impact. Vice President Chris Dillon says a piece of RAM that cost them $75 before Christmas now costs around $300. As a result, he has seen significant price increases in things like laptops for clients.
People that are investing in IT or planning IT projects, the price fluctuations are off the charts. Without warning, for the most part.
Gamers could also feel the effects. Atlantic indie game developer Other Ocean will have to pay more for their own hardware. But product director Ryan Hale warns that potential price increases for gaming consoles could lead to a decline in the user base.
So once your console or gaming machine is now more expensive, there's either an opt to not upgrade or not buy that machine.
But she says the problem might not last forever, as the rush to make more RAM could create a surplus in a few years. Abby Cole, CBC News, St. John's.
One battle after another is being celebrated as the big winner at the Academy Awards. It was also a big night for Canadian filmmaking talent. For more, let's go to the CBC's Eli Glasner, who was on the red carpet.
And the Oscar goes to Michael B. Jordan.
Cheers, hugs, and tears as Michael B. Jordan won the Best Actor Oscar for his performance in Sinners, beating out Timothée Chalamet, who months ago seemed like a lock. Just one of a number of emotional moments from Sinners' 4 Oscar wins. Another was Autumn Durald-Arcapa becoming the first woman and first racialized person to win the Cinematography Award.
I really want all the women in the room to stand up, because I feel like I don't get here without you guys.
In terms of total hardware, one battle after another led the pack with 6 Oscars, including director Paul Thomas Anderson's first, as well as taking home the coveted Best Picture prize. But it was also a great night for Canadian connections, from the Korean-Canadian K-pop Demon Hunter co-director Maggie Kang.
And for those of you who look like me, I'm so sorry that it took us so long to see us in a movie like this.
The animators of the short The Girl Who Cried Pearls.
Thank you, the fantastic city of Montreal.
And the production designers such as Shane Vio, who brought the twisted Victorian visions of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein to life.
There's no better artisans than in Toronto. I mean, we are definitely on the world market.
A Mexican director collaborating with Canadian creators to bring home the Oscar gold. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Good morning. morning, everyone. Hopefully had a great weekend across this lovely province of ours. Some beautiful spring sunshine. We've got some chilly conditions this morning. Winnipeg, though, the warm spot, which is minus 20, so not so warm, but thanks for joining us. As mentioned, I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. This hour on CBC, a Freedom of Information request reveals Manitoba's trade rep to the United States is making more than previously disclosed by the provincial government. We'll find out more about that. In addition, in this hour of the program, a student filmmaker turns the camera on himself and his mother to come to terms with a turbulent childhood. The story is coming up as the family opens up to help and inspire others who, as they put it, come from the north side of Winnipeg. And we're going to hear what a men's health specialist has to say about the federal government's new national strategy for men's health that was announced earlier this month. So stay tuned, all of that this hour. Right now, Heather Wells is going to be joining us, and she's here with our latest headlines from our newsroom this morning. Hi there.
Hi there. Well, the system used to estimate ER wait times at Winnipeg hospitals has been giving the wrong data. A memo to hospital staff last month says information shown online and at waiting room displays was at times quite inaccurate. It says health officials spent months trying to fix the issue. We'll hear more about that. And animal rights activists are appealing the province's decision to allow Winnipeg to use 2 pesticides to control ground squirrels. Manitoba's Environment Branch has given the city the green light to kill the rodents at 9 sports fields. The Winnipeg Humane Society, Christopher Scavich, says the pesticides are responsible for a slow death and can also kill other species ingesting the poison. So we'll hear more about people who are not pleased with this decision coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Time to get into our forecast now. As I mentioned, clear, brisk, and cold, and also across Winnipeg, Brandon, and Thompson, very similar forecast. So we're talking about sunshine to start, a high of minus 12 in Winnipeg and in Brandon, and then with wind chill, it's going to feel more like minus 31. Up in Thompson, your daytime high is minus 13. It's going to feel more like minus 22, but sunshine north to south. In Winnipeg, right now, we're at minus 20 downtown. We're at minus 25 at the airport. After that daytime high, tonight it's going to be clear, increasing cloud overnight, and then tomorrow expecting some snow and blowing snow, about 5 centimeters, and also expecting some snow in Brandon and Thompson. Let's get into what's happening with the morning commute. We have Sierra Sanders in to cover it. Good morning.
Good morning. And there's not much to cover. It's been a very quiet morning on the commuter line on this Monday morning as folks start to get their weeks started and maybe looking forward to spring break. As you heard in the last hour, it is that time. I'm sure it's on most people's minds here.
Away, yeah.
Exactly. It's very close. So I'm sure people have that on their minds. But the commute is looking pretty good so far, moving smoothly. Nothing major, no major backups or any situations to report right now. But if that's not the case and there is something that is getting in your way, I'd love to hear about it so I can let your fellow listeners and commuters know. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
Well, up next, the latest in our special series of stories as produced by filmmaking students in the Create program over at Sisler High School in collaboration with CBC Manitoba. And this story is raw, it's real, and it's actually rarely heard. This week, as I mentioned, Create student Kingsley Shuchuk took on a story that was especially poignant to him, his own. Kingsley wanted to sit down with his mother and come to terms of sorts with his childhood that he says was marred by drugs, poverty, and gun violence. The two joined me in studio to talk about their story, but let's start with an excerpt from Kingsley's film.
Hi, my name is Kingsley Shuchuk, and this is a glimpse into my story of living Northside with my mom who sold weapons and drugs. We've pretty much lived Northside our whole lives, like a lot of people from Winnipeg, and as a lot of people I know would say, it's not the greatest place to grow up. From moving a lot and being homeless to almost dying sometimes and my mom being arrested, I feel like we suffered a lot as a family, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Despite my family's suffering, I sat down with my mom to document part of our story as a way to look back on how far we've come. You ready? So, What is your opinion on North End since we've lived there a long time?
No, my opinion of the North End is pretty bad. From the life where I was selling drugs, looking at it, I see the darker side.
How did you get into dealing? Why did you get into it?
Next in studio, we have Kingsley Suchek live with us. Hi, Kingsley.
Hi.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And his mom, Melanie Suchek's here too. Hi, Melanie.
Hi.
So as I mentioned, we just played an excerpt of your story. What did it feel like to watch it? I'm just wondering, because it can be a moment, right?
Oddly kind of embarrassing.
Oh, you shouldn't be. I mean, my goodness. So much to share. Why did you want to share? Why did you want to produce your story when you were thinking about what to do?
Okay, so when I was younger, I felt my life after 7th grade was a little different per se. It didn't feel like a lot of people had a similar kind of life per se. My mother was, selling drugs. She's a very unique person, though she was there with us a lot of the time, but at the same time, it was just different.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people had the same experience. I wanted to get it out there.
So you wanted to shed light on something that you felt was important.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's something important to me, and I think it's important to her.
Yeah. And important to other people too, Melanie. Right before we put on our mics, you were saying there's a lot of families that are going to relate to sort of the things that people go through and then the building that
For
can
sure,
happen.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And with trauma and drugs and poverty, just living in that, state of mind, it's hard and you get stuck there.
Yeah. It was obviously incredibly brave to be so honest, the two of you, with your story on screen. But I'm curious, and maybe that's not the right word, brave, but you can tell me because you had a reaction to that word. Tell me why.
I'm brave. No, it's just, I don't know. At this point in my life, I've got nothing else to hide. And if anything, if anyone in the room knows anything, my son, I've been
Yeah, I
100%
know her
real
whole
with
story.
him on a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I chose not to lie to my kids and I guess be real, which in the long run wasn't such a good thing.
I'm
maybe.
glad you were, to be honest.
It's hard to, I don't know.
It's better not keep secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one thing not to keep secrets, though, and be real with your kids. It's another thing when your kid comes and says, let's make a documentary about this. Why'd you agree to do it, Melanie?
Because I know we're not the only one, out there that have experienced this or lived this. It's very common, and especially in North End.
Yeah.
It's very, very common.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit more about when you talked about just wanting to give the best to your kids. And in hindsight, maybe you looked at your choices and thought, maybe now I know that wasn't the right choice, but you were motivated to do the best. You were a single mom, right?
I was definitely a single mom, 17 years.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was hard, but nobody said it was going to be easy. There's no
Yeah.
book that's written that says, hey, this is exactly how you do stuff, like this. There's no right and wrong. It's just knowing better, right? We all have morals and values and stuff. And somewhere along the lines, just things come along and happens to make your life easier. But in the long run, it's making your life even worse.
Yeah.
Selling drugs was a good opportunity to make money. And that was money that, I could have my kids not need anything, They had everything, so...
Yeah, except we kind of missed our mother a lot at home because she was, working.
That was the hard part, either working a
Well,
legit
yeah.
job and not seeing my kids, or putting my kids to bed and not having to spend, that quality time with them, or having all the time in the world, when I could just do 5 minutes here, make a nice big chunk of money, and then, 5 minutes there, and I'm good for the rest of the night, and my kids, and, but...
So it was a trade-off for you in the moment, in a way, where it was, like you said, a legit job, as you put it, but then you're not having time with your kids.
Yeah.
But then you're still struggling with making the ends meet or giving to the kids, or 5 minutes of choosing, the illegal activity.
Yeah.
More time with the kids, more money. Yeah. What was that like for you?
My mother got arrested back when I believe I was 16 when she got arrested for the final time before we got put into child protective care with her grandfather. And for me, that felt really enlightening because back when I was living with her, I was honestly really depressed at the time and really lonely too. So getting the chance to start anew and go to Sisler and graduate and all that, it really helped me.
The way you worded it in your doc is that it forced change.
Yeah, it gave me the motivation back to better my life. And yeah, like I said in the thing, I believe it also helped my mother become better.
So forced change for both people to grow. Yeah. But it's interesting because this moment in the documentary, you also, Melanie, have this real mom moment where you say that was a low point for you. How come?
The low point, well, my kids, right? The whole reason why I was trying to make money to live comfortably was my kids. You know, I wanted them to have everything, be happy, right? So that took a lot of, with selling the drugs, yeah, I was making the kids happy with the money, but at the same time with the drugs, I was just digging myself a hole, and I don't know, just...
Yeah. What was it like for you guys to connect in that moment when you had opposite perspectives, on that time in your life, even though you're somewhere else now?
Actually, to be real with you, that was probably one of the more, maybe like second time ever that he's ever been opposed to whatever.
Yeah,
it was hard for you.
Usually he's always in agreement, or he's supportive, he
yeah, I
has
never
my back,
wanted to
but,
judge you for selling because I knew you had 3 kids, no one to help you.
Yeah.
Stuff is hard.
So you now are out of jail, Melanie, in different place in your life. You've made changes in your life.
Absolutely.
I'm really interested because also at the beginning you said, there's a lot of people living north side that are like a lot of people in the world, but also in Winnipeg living north side that are like in these positions, right? What helped you get to this point? Like what was most important for you?
Well, I've done lots of detox to counseling, to counseling for trauma and cognitive behaviors, and you name it, everything and anything. I've done programs, I've done AA, I've done anything that relates to AA, whether it be drug, alcohol, whatever, right?
We talked a lot based on her going to jail and talked a lot on our emotions and stuff. We kind of got through rough times.
Yeah. How do you feel about him as a filmmaker? I was mentioning just to back up from your story and look at this as an important piece of work for other families. How did you feel about the style of it, and what did it feel like to watch kids film?
I actually thought it was awesome. My first initial question was like, how come you picked me and you? He's like, because we were never bored.
I got Walter White as my mother.
But at the same time, I could sell drugs and, have all this money and be associated with all these people and, and still be normal, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you still have a relationship there. You're still, it's your mom's your mom.
Yeah.
I'm proud of him. I'm so proud of him.
How did you think about the way it turned out? I loved how you used narration, which was very natural. That's hard to do. I told you this off mic, and then also stitched together your interview with your mom. How'd you feel about it?
I felt really good. I originally was going to have narration. I had the idea originally, but then my amazing teachers shouted out to Sister Create, Marcus Fowler, and Mr. Dick Lyons for giving me the idea to put the narration back into it, because I think it really improved the piece, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, what advice would you give, families that are out there maybe listening to the two of you, talk about your story? What advice would you give them to move through some of the tough stuff from a kid's perspective? Because when you started, you said you felt kind of different and there's other kids. Like what advice would you give from a kid's perspective?
If I was going to say back from when I was in 7th grade, I wouldn't have much to say, but now that I've had time to look back on it more, I would say, honestly, just try to keep things honest with people. Like, if you're not honest with people, you're just blurring the lines and you can't really feel each other out. And you wouldn't know how to react to each other, and it's going to become a worse and worse relationship because you just don't know how to interact with each other.
What do you think more North Side families need from the wider Winnipeg to help?
People just need to support each other more, and there shouldn't be programs when it's like, hey, you got arrested, this is why you're getting help now, because that's the only way you really actually get help.
Yeah.
Or if it's forced on you, people should just be encouraged to be like, hey,
what are you going to do next, Kingsley?
Next I'm going back to school again, more post-secondary, to Red River for film.
It was a real pleasure to have you both in here, being real with us on CBC. Good luck with your documentary and with the benefit it's going to have for others that see and watch it. Really appreciate meeting you, Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and nice to see you, Kingsley.
Thank you for your time. It's been a joy.
Awesome.
They are awesome. That is Kingsley Shuchuk and his mother, Melanie Shuchuk. They were in studio with me last week. Their story was produced by Kingsley. You can check it out online. He's a student filmmaker with the Create program over at Sisler High School, along with Create students Caleb Saladago, Neva Davies, and Tarek Barhume. So congrats to all the students with support from CBC Manitoba producers Donna Carrero and Robin Sommerfeld. As I mentioned, you can watch the doc on our website and all the other student docs as well at cbc.ca/Manitoba. So much value in that conversation. All right, it's 7:26. I'm Marcy Marcusa. It is Monday morning. It's chilly out there. It's, chilly. Is that the word? It's -20. That's without wind chill. And today we're going to feel like we're about -31 this morning. Lots of sunshine, though, coming north to south, east to west across all of Manitoba today. Well, let's talk about hockey. Paul McCowan is in to start our morning sports. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Marcy.
So the Jets, a big win for them yesterday over the Blues.
3-2 last night over St. Louis, a team that they were tied with heading into last night's game. And with the win, the Jets climbed to within 5 points of a playoff spot. They just keep hanging around the fringes of that wild card race. And last night, not their best hockey. They got bailed out big time by goalie Eric Comrie. St. Louis out shooting the Jets 31-16. Scott Arniel didn't love it, but he says he'll take the 2 points.
We're trying to get ourselves in the playoff spot, and maybe having a goaltender stand on his head like Combs did. However it comes about, we have to find a way to stay in game. That's the disappointing thing about the Ranger game and the Anaheim game. We weren't really into the game, both emotionally and physically, and I thought those other games, we were in them that way, and our compete level was high, and it allowed us to find a way to grab points off those games.
Yeah, the compete level will have to be high going forward. Next up is a game against the team right above the Jets in the standings, the Nashville Predators. 2 more big points on the line tomorrow night in Winnipeg.
All right, and as Heather was saying in our news, yesterday's afternoon game actually seems to work for the Jets when you look at their records. So maybe we should get more afternoon games. All right, let's talk about curling. Canada earning a 3rd straight win at the Women's World Curling Championship also yesterday.
Yeah, Carrie Anderson and her rink off to a dominant start in Calgary, 3-0 after that win yesterday over China, and it was not close, a 9-3 final. And for all the success Anderson has had this year, it has not looked this easy. You heard Shannon Burchard talk yesterday about the team often playing with their backs against the wall. Anderson, though, made the case yesterday that we should not be surprised by Team Canada's hot start.
Even throughout the season, we weren't terrible. It wasn't bad. We're here playing in the points bet, and we had one bad game, and then we played lights out the whole entire time. So we've been playing pretty good, and sometimes you're on the wrong side of the inch. We're just capitalizing on any opportunities this week. Will definitely be beneficial.
And no wrong side of the inch in Calgary so far. We'll see if it continues today. Canada facing Denmark this afternoon, first stones at 3 p.m.
And let's finish with golf, because we saw a surprising top Canadian over the weekend at the Players' Championship. I was watching this yesterday. I didn't know until this morning his Winnipeg connection.
Yeah, Sudarshan Yelamaraju, not born in Winnipeg, but moved to Winnipeg from India when he was 4. And, he's a heck of a story. First of all, he's a PGA Tour rookie. But the thing that caught everyone off guard yesterday is that he is largely self-taught as a golfer. Here he is yesterday talking about how he learned to play.
I watched on TV and just something fascinated me, and I just got into it. Me and my dad, we kind of learned the game together. Well, he played cricket growing up, so there's similar characteristics. We watch videos of different players. We see what kind of they do, and he kind of sees, okay, maybe try something else. We tried different things. It felt good, but eventually when you're out on the course, it maybe didn't work, and we're like, okay, I've got to go back and see what can work for me. A lot of trial and error.
Yeah, he and his dad learned to golf by watching YouTube videos of guys like Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods. So much to like about his story, including the fact that even now, as a professional, he does not have a swing coach. He has his dad look over videos of his swing. Just a heck of a weekend for Yelamaraju, and we'll see what more he can accomplish as the season progresses.
It's so crazy. Apparently, he swung those first clubs at the Golf Dome here in Winnipeg, so just local reference. So
yes, indeed.
We have got to get out there with him and his dad and see if we can grab that interview.
Yeah, for sure.
That's phenomenal. Crazy. I don't even know what he'd be thinking this morning. And hope for all the golfers out there, right? Self-taught.
Oh, yeah. Well, and you know, I mean, just from
Unheard
watching
of.
videos, being able to translate that to your swing is big level of talent.
Impossible? For me, anyway. All right. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks, Marcy.
That's Paul McGowan with Morning Sports. Still ahead on the program, we are going to hear more about the Canadian government. They're looking for your input to help develop a national men's health strategy. So specifically, we have an interview with a doctor who opened Canada's first clinic focusing on health issues unique to men here in Winnipeg. So that's after your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is minus 20. Spring is just days away, but we are still feeling frigid. In Winnipeg today, sunshine, a high of minus 12 with a risk of frostbite. The system used to estimate ER wait times at Winnipeg hospitals has been giving wrong data. A memo to hospital staff last month says information shown online and at waiting room displays was at times quite inaccurate. It says health officials spent months trying to fix the issue with the vendor. Dr. Stevenson Strobel has researched wait time estimates. He says posting times lower than reality can make a big difference.
Arguably, what that would do was to cause crowding in the emergency department. There's probably at least good reason to expect that crowding in an emergency department would make it harder to find sicker patients, sort of the needle in the haystack kind of issue.
The memo says multiple flaws have been addressed. The province says it's monitoring the issue and will fix any new problems as they come up. Manitoba's trade rep to the United States is making even more money than the province initially disclosed. Richard Madden's annual consulting fee is $482,000 Canadian. That is according to a contract obtained by CBC News through a Freedom of Information request. The province said last fall when Madden's compensation was almost $100,000 less. PC leader Abi Khan calls this concerning.
Manitobans struggling to put food on the table. They're struggling with the economy, affordability, and this NDP government is paying someone almost $500,000 a year, and he's brought in $0 to this province.
The trade rep declined to comment. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. Manitoba has approved the use of 2 pesticides in Winnipeg to control ground squirrel population. As CBC's Santiago Arias Orozco tells us, animal rights advocates say the substances are inhumane and can put other animals at risk.
The city of Winnipeg says ground squirrel holes can be a safety hazard. Officials asked the province for permission to kill some rodents with a deadly bait and an asphyxiant foam. Approval was granted to use both pesticides at 9 fields this year. Biologist James Herr is disappointed.
It's not really going to be that effective, but it will cause animals to suffer.
Herr says it's hard for the foam to reach a deadly concentration inside the burrows, and with the bait, there are risks predators or pets could eat it by accident. That's alarming for the Winnipeg Humane Society.
They'd suffer the same painful symptoms, and all the way could be leading right up to death that a ground squirrel would have.
A number of rules come with the pesticide permit, including a time limit for the baits used before new squirrels are born. The city plans to begin applying the pesticides in early spring. Santiago Arias Orozco, CBC News, Winnipeg.
U.S. President Donald Trump is trying to assemble a coalition of allies to help secure the flow of oil from the Middle East as Iranian attacks make it more dangerous. Last night on Air Force One, Trump telling reporters it's time for NATO countries to support the United States.
We're always there for NATO. We're helping them with Ukraine. It's got an ocean in between us. Doesn't affect us, but we've helped them. It'd be interesting to see what country wouldn't help us with a very small endeavor, which is just keeping the strait open.
The Carney government has repeatedly said it would not join in the war against Iran. Now, the wars in the Middle East and Ukraine are expected to dominate the agenda during Prime Minister Mark Carney's visit to the United Kingdom. He is on the final leg of an overseas tour that has seen him discuss Arctic security with Nordic leaders in Oslo. And today, Carney meets with Prime Minister Keir Starmer. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Well, the Jets certainly turned it up this weekend.
Watch out, here comes Shifley. Mark Shifley to the net, to the backhand, he scores!
Mark Shifley in the first period on TSN as the Winnipeg Jets beat the Blues 3-2. It was the second straight afternoon game after the Jets beat the Avalanche on Saturday. Coach Scott Arniel says his team is running on fumes.
I just thought the guys did a great job of digging in and finding a way, no matter how good, ugly, however it was. We needed the 2 points, and however we got them, we got them. A great goaltender helped us as well.
And that goaltender was Eric Comrie in net for his 11th win of the season. Winnipeg has one more home game. It is tomorrow night against the Nashville Predators. You can find the latest news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Heather, I know that we are not supposed to look too far ahead in the forecast because it could change, right?
I know. I've been doing it too.
I can't help it. Look at Friday. Ooh.
I know. Do you know what? I mean, it starts Wednesday. We start melting, but yeah it looks 7 for Friday. That's I guess when spring
could it be?
happens, it happens.
I'm kind of hoping, but then you know what's going to be happening. Then we'll start doing the stories about the water running and it's melting too fast. I love Winnipeg. All right, we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start with today. That we can tell you with more certainty. We do have a sunny day, but it's going to be brisk and cold, especially with wind chill. All across the province today, very similar conditions. So I'm actually going to lump Winnipeg and Brandon together for our regional forecast here because it's pretty much the same forecast. Sunshine for Winnipeg and Brandon, a high of -12. With wind chill, it's going to feel more like -31, -33. So that's the day today. And then into tonight, clear sky, low down to -21 in Winnipeg. Tonight in Brandon, your temperature will rise up to about -15 by morning. But then tomorrow, both of us getting snow. So Winnipeg going to get about 5 centimeters of snow, a high of -9 tomorrow with wind. Winds gusting, also gusty winds in Brandon tomorrow. Your snow is going to begin earlier in the morning with a risk of freezing rain in the afternoon. And you're going to get a bit more. So the system will bring 5 to 10 centimeters of snow in Brandon with, again, blowing snow. So on Wednesday, as Heather alluded to, if the forecast does hold, we're both going to warm up. So Wednesday in Winnipeg looking for around 2 degrees above zero. And then on Wednesday in Brandon, a high of 1. Right now in the city of Winnipeg, it's -20 downtown. And in Brandon, in your city, it is -24 degrees right now. Finally, up in Thompson, also very similar. I could have lumped you in here too, because sunny today and a high of -13 for Thompson. And again, with wind chill, it'll feel a lot colder. Tonight, though, partly cloudy and very cloudy overnight. Into tomorrow, after a low of -25 overnight. Tomorrow, periods of snow for you as well. So 2 centimeters in Thompson and a high of -13. Currently, it is -36, so very cold. Up north, once again, though, no watches or warnings in effect. Let's find out about the morning commute this Monday. March 16th already. Hi, Sierra Sanders.
Hi, Marcy. And there's not much to report this morning. It has been a very quiet morning on the commuter line, which is good news for the folks that are out there on their commute or just getting ready or hopping into the car, letting the car warm up because we still need to let the car warm up a little bit, I guess, at this point in the hopefully soon to come spring. But something to keep in mind if you are listening right now, might want to go out there and start your car a little bit early, warm it up a little so you're not too cold when you hop in. But yes, that has been the theme of the day so far. It's been quite quiet out there. I did get a call from Bill, and Bill said it is clear and smooth driving out there. So thanks, Bill, for giving me a call and giving me an update on that. I like to hear happy things too, not just bad things that are going on out there. So it was great to hear from Bill. Thank you so much for calling, Bill, for that little update. It is clear and smooth driving out there. But if that's not the case and something has popped up while you were on your commute, I would love to know about it. Whether you are here in the city or out on the highways in the province, I'd love to know what you're seeing so I can let your fellow commuters and listeners know. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
You almost slid into that old-timey radio voice there at the beginning. There's not much to report out there in traffic.
I sometimes you just have to take a blast of the past,
right?
Nostalgia, I don't really know if I'm there yet. I don't really know.
Liked it.
Thanks. Maybe that's my new, maybe I need to be a voice actor or something. See, I could do the double interviews. Like I could be both people. I feel like maybe I could.
Thanks, Sierra.
Thank you.
Why are we talking about that? MTC over the weekend, lead actor in Rogers versus Rogers. That show just wrapping up was fabulous. One actor playing 17 different roles. Next on the show, let's turn our attention to your health and specifically men's health. The federal government is launching a new national strategy for men's health. This was announced earlier this month. Now, the goal is to improve the health of men and boys that they are asking for, and they are rather asking for input all across the country to help develop this. Now, some of the existing data that supports this and outlines the need for something like this comes from the Movember Canada 2025 report called The Real Face of Men's Health. In it, it says improving men's health in this country could save $12.4 billion annually. According to the federal government, in addition, men face a shorter life expectancy, 80 years compared to 84 years in women. Dr. Premal Patel is a men's health specialist as well as the medical director and co-founder of the Men's Health Clinic in Winnipeg. It was actually the first specialty-run clinic in Canada with expertise in health issues unique to men. And Dr. Patel joins us via Zoom this morning. Hi there.
Hey, thank you for the invitation.
Thanks for being with us. What are your thoughts on the needs for a strategy like this?
I think it's fantastic. I think greater awareness needs to be taken, which is clearly being identified. And there's a number of other countries which have been kind of finding this trend as well. And apart from just obviously the factor of trying to improve the quality of health of our population, there's also a lot of cost savings to the healthcare system.
How much input were you asked to provide, given that you have one of the first specialty-run clinic for men in Canada?
So very little with this regard, and that's one of the reasons why they're asking for feedback. And just recently, we actually started the Canadian Andrology Society. And so myself and my colleague out in BC, so a group of urologists that specialize in men's health, started the society. And this is the time where we're actually going to reach out to the government to say, well, let's, as much as we're trying to get this message across, let's actually start getting some of the stakeholders and how can we actually improve the quality of men from a lot of us that are on the front lines.
Is it concerning that you were missed in this way, or how do you view it?
Not concerning. I think it's, we started the Men's Health Clinic just a few years ago. And, healthcare is such a vast portfolio. And as we can see on the news every day, there's so many things happening at once. So it's also my position as involved with the Canadian Andrology Society, our Men's Health Clinic. Well, you know what? They're doing this. Let me see if I can reach out that I can help.
What do you hear from the men that you work with, given that your specialized clinic is fairly new? And what difference are you finding it's making already?
I think the one biggest takeaway that people say is that they're so happy that there's finally a place that they feel comfortable talking about some of these intimate conditions. I think when we think about like masculinity and all these sort of concepts, most men just want to seek help and they want to be vulnerable. They want to be able to talk about some of these conditions. And I think that it's been profoundly impactful that they feel comfortable. And some of these patients, I meet them for like 2 seconds and then they're instantly telling me their life story. And they're just letting me know all the facts and being very open. And I truly take that. It's very appreciative as a physician that patients feel so comfortable speaking to me so candidly.
Well, why do you think we haven't had it beforehand? I mean, is there something about, what is it about? Was it men hesitant to seek the help, or it's just, why have men been overlooked in this way for specialty care?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of it has to do with when we think about women, they're often touching with the healthcare system at earlier points. And what I mean by that is that when they're starting having their periods, pap tests during fertility, they're often seeing physicians early. And it's common that women may be more open to speak to, again, this is all generalizable, but women are more likely to speak to their friends and friends about some of these issues that they're dealing with together. Whereas men often just don't talk about these conditions. They're not going to talk about their erectile health and so forth. But I think that's the time to talk about it because when we think about erectile dysfunction, actually it's an early warning sign for cardiac disease. And we actually showed this in Manitoba data that we published last year, which that men who had erectile dysfunction or ED had earlier cardiac events. And a lot of it just has to do with blood flow. The same blood that supplies down there, same blood that supplies the heart, except the vessels are bigger. And so when you're starting to have issues, you have to start thinking about your heart health. And so if you imagine when you're 20s and 30s, and you're starting to see doctors really early, we can start promoting that healthy living. Whereas you may not choose to be seen until your 40s and 50s when you're having problems, and that it's been 20 years of damage to these blood vessels. So earlier touch points is so key.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, Dr. Patel, because last week we did an interview about Gen Z, and it was about mental health specifically, but it was about how that generation is reaching out more and more open to reaching out for help. But one of the specific things in the report that we looked at last week was young men in particular, and that was a new thing, or sort of being more open about their mental health. Are you seeing that translate in physical health for young men, do you think, or are you hopeful that it will to get more men talking at younger ages about their health?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think now that with social media, people are being more open. I think the cons of that we see from social media is that we're also biased, that we see all these great things, that people are living such amazing lives. How are they so fit, successful? That it is causing a lot of issues as well that we see not just in young men, but older men as well. And there is a huge amount of mental health issues that are being overlooked. Um, and I think it's going to take some time, honestly, to that people are going to be more open to it because there's this concept of I can just do it myself, I'll figure it out. But we have to start opening the conversation because you can't do this yourself. Like you need help.
I guess just last, when they come to you to talk about this strategy or when you give your input as they're seeking it across Canada, what's the top thing that you're going to tell them needs to change to improve the health of men in this country?
I think a lot of it just has to do with awareness. It needs to be earlier touch points to the healthcare system. We need more, we need more primary care physicians. We need more, funding towards mental health specialists. We need more comprehensive patient care that it needs to be multifaceted, longitudinal, that when you're going into a clinic that you can see mental health, family, primary care, dietitians, that they're impacting every aspect of life. And when we think about cost savings, that's where it's going to be, is that if we improve the health of our population, it's going to have impacts 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and that is what's going to save the healthcare system, and that's also what's going to help our population be healthier.
Really appreciate your time this morning, Dr. Primal. Thank you very much for being with us, or Dr. Patel, rather.
Thank you so much.
That is Dr. Primal Patel with us, men's health specialist, as well as the medical director and co-founder of the Men's Health Clinic here in Winnipeg. Now, if you are listening and you want to have your say, as we mentioned, the new national strategy for men's health, they're looking for public input. You can check it out at canada.ca and follow links there. The deadline for your input is June 1st.
Local news is in decline across Canada, and this is bad news for all of us. With less local news, noise, rumors, and misinformation fill the void, and it gets harder to separate truth from fiction. That's why CBC News is putting more journalists in more places across Canada, reporting on the ground from where you live, telling the stories that matter to all of us. Because local news is big news. Choose news, not noise. CBC News.
It's -20 on your Monday morning here. We're already halfway through March, people. We're getting there. And by the end of the week, we could be above zero again, but we're still well below zero here. -12 is our daytime high, with wind chill going to feel like -31. That's across most of the province. Loads of sunshine, though, today is what we're expecting. And your morning commute's going fine. 788-3093, though, if you do spot a problem in whatever city you're in Manitoba, or if you're out on the highway, please let us know. Well, national and international news is coming up here at 8 o'clock, and while several countries have been trying to mediate an end to the conflict in the Middle East, now in its third week, neither side appears open to the idea of a ceasefire. U.S. President Donald Trump has been calling for allies to secure the Strait of Hormuz. He's threatening to launch further strikes in Iran's oil hub, Karg Island. Iranian officials have vowed to keep the strait closed, saying they would respond to any attack on energy facilities. For the latest on the conflict, CBC's Rosemary Barton spoke with Robert Pape over the weekend. He's a professor of political science at the University of Chicago and previously served as an advisor to the White House.
Where we are leading into week 3 is that President Trump's plan for a quick and decisive victory has failed. We now see Iran more dangerous and more powerful than before the bombing. And now President Trump is reacting to this by doubling down, by escalating the war in a search for a victory. He doesn't know where it's going to be, but it's a search for victory. I call this the escalation trap. This history will treat this brutally. The cost will be paid by the world. When strong states attack smaller countries, we saw this in Vietnam, and then their plans don't work out, they think, rather than pull back or negotiate, they think that what they should do is double down, because after all, they're still the strong state. However, Iran is not Vietnam. Iran did not take the Strait of Hormuz. Iran was actually a pretty powerful state to begin with. And what they've done is taken over 20% of the world's oil. They've literally taken a chokehold on the world's oil. And the reason I think he's really stuck is because now to walk away, you've got to end the war to get Israel to stop bombing and killing leaders, Russia to stop giving military intelligence to Iran, and somehow you got to persuade Iran to give you back the Strait of Hormuz. Well, I don't think they're giving it back. You see what I mean? If anything, they want to hold it tight, at least through the midterms, to bring President Trump down. That's what I think this is. They have the Vietnamese strategy here. We've seen this strategy of long war before. Now, the details, of course, are different, but nonetheless, they're following a tried and true way for a weak power to wreck America. The difference between this and Vietnam is they're also wrecking the global economy.
That's Robert Pape, a professor of political science at University of Chicago. The war has now killed more than 2,000 people, mostly in Iran, and created the biggest oil supply disruption in our history. He was in conversation over the weekend with CBC's Rosemary Barton, and you can get the latest national and international news on the war and more coming up at the top of the clock. Right now it is 10 to 8 on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Well, we have some new music for you this morning from Jacob Berdovsky. He announced his brand new album called Tell the Kids We Tried. It's out early this July. And for now, he's sharing the first single so we can pass it along. It's called Past Mistakes. We actually are going to have this for you at another point. Maybe we'll get it on after 8 o'clock, and that is because my next guest has just walked in to fill us in on more that's been happening in a story you might have heard on the news this morning. So it'll 9 minutes to 8 o'clock. If you were listening to the news, then you may have heard that former CTV and CBC reporter Richard Madden started working as Manitoba's trade rep to the United States last year in Washington. And the province said last fall, when CBC asked, that he was making more than $333,000. But a Freedom of Information request reveals he's actually making more. My next guest is CBC reporter Bartley Kivas, who is in studio now. Hi, Bartley.
Good morning there. How are you? How are you? There I am.
Hi.
Good morning.
Thanks
How
for
are you?
coming in. I'm fine. So let's walk through the details of this story. First of all, starting with the job. So what is Richard Madden's job?
Richard Madden was hired by the province last year to represent Manitoba's trade interests in the United States. So you can remember, despite all the chaos in the world right now, there was chaos in the world a year ago, perhaps on a different scale, where Canada was very, very concerned about its trade relationships with the United States after Donald Trump came into power for a second time and decided that perhaps the existing situations regarding the trade along this big, long, undefended border were not going to be the same thing. So Richard Madden was hired to basically work his contacts in the United States and effectively be Manitoba's person down there.
And how much is he making?
Well, according to a Freedom of Information request received by my colleague, Kristen Animal, he's making $482,000 a year in a consulting fee. Now, he's making $29K US a month. That works out to $350 UK and 4 cents a year. That works out to $482,000 roughly at the exchange rate, according to the Bank of Canada, on the day his contract was signed. So on top of that, Madden's entitled to up to $25,000 US in hospitality and diplomatic expenses every year, and up to $12,000 US a year for operating expenses. And that means Richard Madden is eligible for up to $532,000 Canadian a year. Now, that's a lot more than $387,000. Now, I should note that according to his contract, if you add the expenses to his consulting fees, that works out to $387,000 US. So the two figures are the same.
So lots of figures thrown at people on the radio here. So I
know. Let's go back there.
up.
Basically, he's making $500,000 and even more than $500,000 eligible when you factor in expenses.
Okay. Now, the province was not eager to disclose the compensation. So what happened?
So in June, they didn't state what his compensation was. In October, after my colleague Kristen Annabelle asked a lot of questions, they said he was making a $387,000 salary. And I'm putting salary in quotation marks here. Kristen filed a Freedom of Information request, received a contract from the province, and that original contract did not include Madden's consulting fee, the name of his corporation, or the amount of money was reimbursed for reasonable out-of-pocket expenses. So Kristen questioned these redactions, and then we were sent the previously blacked out figures.
Okay. So how did the Premier's office explain then the discrepancy between the lower and higher compensation numbers?
Okay, I'm going to be transparent. We asked if they messed up Canadian versus U.S. funds, because there's the 387 then the 387. And they said no. They called the $387,000 figure a, quote, base salary, unquote, and said he was meant to pay other things like insurance. The contract, however, says that his consulting fee is an all-inclusive contract. Now, we asked for an interview. They didn't do an interview, and Richard Madden declined to speak to us for this story.
How is the rest of the legislature reacting to this?
Spoke to the leader of the opposition, Abi Khan, this past Friday. Now, back in the fall, he said it was ridiculous that Madden was making this particular sum of money. This is what he had to say about Madden making even more.
Yeah, my comments now are that he's making almost $500,000 a year while Manitobans are struggling to pay their bills here. Manitobans struggling to put food on the table. They're struggling with the economy, affordability. And this NDP government is paying someone almost $500,000 a year, and he's brought in $0 to this province. It's sad. It's concerning, and I have a lot of questions for the Premier that he has to answer for Manitobans. How can they justify paying someone $500,000 a year when Manitobans can't pay their bills?
Now, to fact check, I did ask Con, okay, so what evidence do you have that he's brought in $0? And Con pointed out that, Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe is flying around the world making trade deals, and we don't see similar things here for Manitoba, even though we have this trade rep.
What is comparable compensation for this type of a position?
So, the province has previously said, look, we were hiring a Canadian here and not just some big U.S. firm. Back in the fall, Canoe spokesperson Ryan Stelter said that trade representatives were making in the area of $350,000 in 2025. There's firms hired for about $600,000. But you look at Madden's fee, it's about 2.5 times what Canoe makes as premier, and it's more than what Mark Carney makes as premier. And I looked around. It's
Prime Minister, yeah.
Prime Minister, excuse me. I'm now speaking in French, translated into English and back to French. Premier Minister, but you look at the compensation disclosures for the healthcare system. What Madden is making is comparable to that of a pathologist with Manitoba Health or a senior emergency room physician here with the Winnipeg Regional Health Authority.
Okay, for that context, thank you, and thank you, Bartley.
You're more than welcome.
Reporter Bartley Kivas. Richard Madden, as Bartley pointed out, did decline to comment to CBC on the story about his compensation. The province declined to comment on record as well. You can read, though, the story from Bartley and from Kristen Annabelle on our website later today, and that is at cbc.ca/Manitoba, or rather this morning, cbc.ca/Manitoba. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Still ahead on our program after 8 o'clock, still with a healthcare story here. Manitoba introduced legislation to establish nurse-patient ratios. Last week, these were announced. But BC's been implementing ratios like this since last summer. So we wanted to know how it's been going there. They first proposed ratios in 2023, so they actually have them implemented in some of their departments. We're going to talk to their nurses union, so that's coming up after 8 o'clock right here on the show. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here, and it's -20 in Winnipeg. Our high -12. Going to be lots of sunshine today. Looks really nice and clear out there, but it will be crisp. Sure feels like spring, and so it is on this March 16th, Monday morning. With the wind chill, it's going to feel, though, like -31, so Winnipeg remains below normal conditions. By the end of the week, hopefully we're going to warm up well, maybe even above normal conditions, so above zero. So we'll see how it goes. Traffic-wise, sure is quiet. 788-3093 if you need us. And your headlines now from Heather Wells.
Well, the system behind wait time estimates at emergency departments has been giving the wrong data. An internal memo last month to hospital staff across Winnipeg says there were multiple flaws making estimates, quote, quite inaccurate. The memo says multiple flaws have been addressed, including an unexplained problem that led to patients being undercounted at night. We'll hear more about that as well. Statistics Canada is out this morning with its latest report on inflation. It shows the annual rate nationally dropped to 1.8% in February, down from 2.3% the month before, and it attributes the decline in part to Ottawa's GST HST tax holiday. So we'll hear more about that as well in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
Heather Wells in our CBC Manitoba News Center this morning. Stay with us. World Report, national and international news is coming up next at 8 o'clock. It's 1 minute to.
On Q. I'm Garvey Bailey in for Tom Power. Hanu Mankind broke out globally with his 2024 hit Big Dogs, but his story started much earlier, from open mics in Kerala to signing with Def Jam India. Now he's on his first North American tour, and he'll be here to talk about putting Indian hip-hop on the map.
Wait a minute, get it how you live it. Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Dr. Joss Reimer was a voice of calm during the pandemic as the head of Manitoba's COVID vaccine task force. Now she's taking on the job of Canada's top doctor at a time when public health is facing attacks and needs to rebuild trust. Dr. Joss Reimer on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Martina Fitzgerald. Countries are responding to Donald Trump's appeal for help in the Strait of Hormuz, but their reply may not be what the U.S. president wants. Trump is warning it will be very bad for the future of NATO if allies do not help secure the critical shipping route. The CBC's chief correspondent Adrian Arsenault joins me from Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Adrian, this call from Donald Trump, he seems very determined. What else did he say?
U.S. President Donald Trump has put out a few signals here. He said he's looking for a few countries to help along Iran's coast, saying he wanted people who are going to knock out some bad actors along the shore. So that sounds like he knows there will be Iranian forces on the coastline to deal with, and he's adamant other countries must help clear the Strait of Hormuz. He's been angry they aren't, says the U.S. is always there for NATO. It will be bad for NATO if it's not there now. But now we're hearing from UK's Prime Minister Keir Starmer that clearing the strait will not be a NATO mission. Italy and Germany say there's no reason to do it. A no from Australia. Japan is not going to do it at this point either. So who joins and what they do, if they do join, is still very unclear. The U.S. President, incidentally, first called this war a small excursion. He's now called clearing the Strait of Hormuz a small endeavor. And the problem is, at this point, there doesn't seem to be anything small about it.
Adrian, this war is playing out on so many fronts. What is the latest?
I think, unfortunately, there are patterns to this war. They're repeating daily this seemingly steady attempt to wear down the other, if you will. So we're keeping an eye on Lebanon this morning. Israel says it's begun a limited and targeted ground operation in the south of that country. The language Israel is using is of a forward defensive maneuver, is what they're calling it. But how targeted, how limited will be the questions today. And from our vantage point here in Saudi Arabia, it's been a few hours of very heavy drones and interceptions in the east. The kingdom is very tight-lipped on whether there's been damage, and we see really very little indication of it, but certainly the volume appears to be increasing.
That is the CBC's chief correspondent, Adrian Arsenault in Riyadh. Donald Trump is also threatening to delay a summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping if Beijing does not help secure the Strait of Hormuz. China's foreign ministry is pushing back. It says head of state diplomacy plays an irreplaceable strategic guiding role in China-U.S. relations. Beijing is feeling the squeeze from the war in Iran. Not only is it a major buyer of Iranian oil, countries in the Middle East are also huge consumers of Chinese goods. Many of the Chinese exporters serving the region are located in Yiwu. The CBC's Lisa Xing is there.
The city of Yiwu is home to the world's largest wholesale market for small commodities. Tens of thousands of vendors sell everything from electronics to toys to jewelry. Their biggest clients, countries in the Middle East, including Iran.
Middle East customer is our old friend.
Flanked by a wall full of different styles of safety shoes at her showroom, Suad Ding is worried. 70% of the exporter's business comes from that region, but now shipping costs are 4 to 5 times more than before the war.
New year, we have 3 containers from the customer is Egypt, now still in my warehouse.
The war on the other side of the world felt intimately here, not just in the rising costs of shipping and goods, but materials like plastics. Despite the worries, there's also optimism for the long term. Li Ye is the vice president of the Chamber of Commerce for the Northeast region of China. As long as we are not participating in the war, our products are liked by everyone and the price is relatively cheap, he says. Li is confident the sellers here will bounce back. Many, like Ding, are finding customers from other countries like Argentina, and he says they've weathered conflicts before and doubts this time will be different. Lisa Xing, CBC News, Yiwu, China.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is wrapping up his latest international trip in London.
Well, Mark, let me extend you a very warm welcome back here at Downing Street. It's really good.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcoming Carney to 10 Downing Street, where they discussed the situation in the Middle East and condemned Iran's missile and drone attacks, including on civilian and energy infrastructure. Both prime ministers said they would continue to pressure Russia to end its war in Ukraine. After today, Carney will be taking a vacation, but the prime minister says he will stay in close contact with his staff, monitoring the situation in the Middle East. The latest inflation data from Statistics Canada is out. The Consumer Price Index has fallen from 2.3% in January to 1.8% in February. Our senior business correspondent Peter Armstrong breaks it down.
The biggest factor at play here is the fact that we're comparing this year's numbers to last year when that GST, HST tax holiday was still in place. So without that, without those tax breaks, prices were obviously higher. In fact, if you strip that out, CPI was up 1.9% and has been decelerating since December. Housing prices were down. Gasoline prices were down compared to last year as well. But those gas prices, that's where a report like this can get a little murky. We have, of course, seen a surge in gas prices due to the war in Iran. That's not in these numbers, but it will show up in the months to come. And gas, of course, is just the start. There are a ton of critical metals and minerals that have been held up in the Gulf, which will lead to shortages, and that will lead to increased costs. So enjoy this lower than expected inflation for now, because by all indications, it's not going to last. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
A breakthrough by scientists in New Brunswick is helping fight a deadly oyster disease. Since it was detected 2 years ago, MSX has cost the Atlantic shellfish industry millions. But now researchers have mapped its genome. As the CBC's Caitlin Beliveau reports, harvesters hope it helps the industry bounce back.
I have a specific memory of us high-fiving and taking a picture and being extremely ecstatic.
It took 7 months and 17,000 oyster samples, but scientists in southern New Brunswick have done what no one else could.
Yes, this is kind of breakthrough, I would say. Nobody has ever sequenced MSX genome.
Rebecca Liston and Atik Rehman isolated a single cell from MSX, a parasite that's killing oysters from New Brunswick to Newfoundland. The oyster industry in New Brunswick is worth $24 million a year, according to Statistics Canada, and pulling up dead oysters has put harvesters' livelihoods at risk. The problem was little was known about the rapidly spreading disease until now.
This tool will help us locate the ones that are resistant.
The information will help harvesters alter their genetic code for generations to come, and that's music to Serge Leblanc's ears.
We're all hoping that it's going to come back to the way it was, because we had a very promising industry.
Leblanc is a biologist and oyster harvester on New Brunswick's east coast. He says it will take years to rebuild the oyster population, but the science is promising. The goal is that other scientists and policymakers will build off of their work. Caitlin Beliveau, CBC News, Moncton.
One battle after another. He's being celebrated as the big winner at the Academy Awards. It was also a big night for Canadian filmmaking talent. For more, let's go to the CBC's Eli Glasner, who was on the red carpet.
And the Oscar goes to
Michael B. Jordan.
Cheers, hugs, and tears as Michael B. Jordan won the Best Actor Oscar for his performance in Sinners, beating out Timothée Chalamet, who months ago seemed like a lock. Just one of a number of emotional moments from Sinners' 4 Oscar wins. Another was Autumn Durald-Arcapa becoming the first woman and first racialized person to win the Cinematography Award.
I really want all the women in the room to stand up, because I feel like I don't get here without you guys.
In terms of total hardware, one battle after another led the pack with 6 Oscars, including director Paul Thomas Anderson's first, as well as taking home the coveted Best Picture prize. But it was also a great night for Canadian connections, from the Korean-Canadian K-pop demon hunter co-director Maggie Kang.
And for those of you who look like me, I'm so sorry that it took us so long to see us in a movie like this.
The animators of the short The Girl Who Cried Pearls.
Thank you, the fantastic city of Montreal.
And the production designers such as Shane Vio, who brought the twisted Victorian visions of Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein to life.
There's no better artisans than in Toronto. I mean, we are definitely on the world market.
A Mexican director collaborating with Canadian creators to bring home the Oscar gold. Eli Glasner, CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Martina Fitzgerald. This is CBC News.
Oh, Manitoba, I love you, but stop being so cold, could ya? Minus 20 right now in Winnipeg. That's the warm spot. Lynn Lake's minus 38. And that is the cold spot. Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio, live from downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, and on YouTube. So as you heard, weather a little below normal still. We should be warmer by the end of the week. This half hour on the show, we're going to build on something we heard from our health minister last week. Manitoba has introduced a proposed legislation to establish nurse-patient ratios. But BC has been implementing those ratios since last summer. So we're going to go to BC this half hour, talk to the union. They first proposed this in 2023. So how is it going there? They've implemented some of these ratios in some of the departments, I should say. And also, what does it look like as they're discussing those ratios when it comes to emergency departments? Stay tuned. That interview this half hour. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She has other Monday morning headlines that are developing. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the system used to estimate ER wait times at Winnipeg hospitals has been giving the wrong data. A memo to hospital staff in February says information shown online and at waiting room displays was at times quite inaccurate. It says health officials spent months trying to fix the issue with the vendor. So we'll hear more about that story. As well, animal rights activists are appealing the province's decision to allow Winnipeg to use 2 pesticides to control ground squirrels. The Environment Branch giving the city the green light to kill the rodents at 9 sports fields with a deadly bait and an asphyxiant foam. But some say that not only is this a slow, painful death, but it can also harm other species who ingest that poison. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Into the forecast now. Minus 20 and calm right now in Winnipeg. That's downtown. At the airport, it feels like minus 25, so a lot colder. And with the wind chill, it's going to feel like about minus 31 factored in. So our daytime high is minus 12. Lots of sunshine expected. Beautiful blue sky in downtown Winnipeg right now. Overnight clear. Tomorrow, a little bit of snow coming, about 5 centimeters. And I should mention, it's one of those very unusual days where our daytime highs pretty much in Winnipeg, Brandon, and Thompson are identical with clear skies. So that's the way it's looking over most of Manitoba today, crisp. Let's get into what is happening on the morning commute. I feel like it's been unusually quiet, Sarah Sanders.
It has been very quiet this morning. I really only received one call from Bill last hour, and it was that things are moving smoothly out there. And I think that's been the theme of the commute this morning, is that it's been very smooth out there. But there still is a little bit of time left in the show. So if there is something that is popping up or getting in your way, I'd love to know about it so I can let your fellow commuters and fellow listeners know whether you were here in the city or anywhere else on the highways or anywhere else in the province. I'd love to hear about it. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
Let's talk numbers. 3-to-1, 2-to-1. How many patients can a nurse care for at any given time without burning out? That is effectively what Manitoba's health officials are going to have to figure out if new legislation here in Manitoba is passed. Health Minister Uzoma Asagwara introduced this bill last week.
This legislation is going to protect nurse-to-patient ratios, and we're doing this in Manitoba because we know that no matter which government is in power, nurses should trust that there's a mechanism in place to protect nurse-to-patient ratios when they've rolled out.
Manitoba, as you've heard, is proposing legislation to protect nurse-to-patient ratios. But if it passes, it won't be the first province to implement this kind of a ratio. 2 years ago, BC became the first to establish rules for how many patients a nurse can take care of in an effort to address burnout there among healthcare workers. So we're going to BC. Adrienne Gear is president of the British Columbia Nurses Union. Good morning.
Good morning.
So if we step back, why did your province need to put ratios in place? What was the desire?
Well, certainly nurses in BC, and let's be honest, across Canada, for years and years have been struggling with unsafe, unmanageable workloads. Certainly as a union, we've tried different things in terms of, trying to negotiate requirements in our collective agreement. I think there was some good intention, but ultimately those strategies did not work out. And I would say, in April of 2023, our current government, which is an NDP government, took the bold step of reaching an agreement with the Nurses Bargaining Association. And that was really, sort of the launch point for us.
I don't profess we throw out every single number, but there are different numbers and different ratios in different departments for nurses to patients. Can you give us a couple of examples of those numbers and ratios that have been most important and which departments they're in?
Yeah, I'm happy to. First, I want to say is this work has really only begun. And so what we've done is we have endorsed, we've established ratios in many of the acute care areas, but there are areas where we have not yet determined the ratio. And we've only started implementing in certain areas. So it's not like this is an initiative that is fully complete, but certainly it's been positive and it's moving forward nonetheless. An example would be on a medical surgical unit, the maximum number of patients one nurse can safely care for would be 4. So the ratio is 1 nurse to 4 patients. Intensive care, it is 1 nurse to 1 patient, and that is regardless if they are ventilated or not. Another example would be acute palliative care is 1 nurse to a maximum of 3 patients.
If it was, say, 1 to 4 in the surgical unit, what would it have been before in reality?
Yeah, great question. And here's the thing. There's high degree of variability. And so when we started looking at sort of what is the status quo before actually determining the ratio, I mean, in some areas, the ratio was already 1 to 4. In some areas, it was 1 to 6, 1 to 7, 1 to 8. In reality, though, coming out of the pandemic, in a severe nursing shortage, I mean, I can tell you horror stories of where a nurse has been responsible for upward of 15 fresh post-op surgical patients.
We have issues in our emergency departments here that continue to make headlines. I'm wondering what are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to implementing ratios in your ERs?
Yeah, so that is certainly an area that is a priority for us. We have established the ratio, but it is not yet implemented. So in terms of, your sort of, for lack of a better word, sort of typical emergency room patient, let's say someone who, broke their leg skiing, coming into emergency, that ratio would be 1 nurse to a maximum of 3 patients. However, if a patient is coming in a cardiac arrest or it's been a trauma, then that ratio is 1 to 1, and in reality may require actually many more nurses to 1 patient. And so emergency is going to be probably our most challenging area to implement. Nonetheless, we have reached agreement on what the ratios will be. And there is sort of preparatory work underway in terms of understanding, how many patients a day, what is the volume of an emergency? And then therefore that will help give us a better understanding of how many more nurses will need to be added to make sure that those ratios are maintained.
Yeah, because you need to have the full complement of people on the floor to flex and move depending on what walks through the door.
Exactly. In emergency, I think the other thing that we need to really think about is that and in other areas like intensive care, while all nurses can provide good nursing care, it does require specialized skills to work in some of these areas. And what concerns me is that I don't know that there's actually really good data and tracking in terms of how many nurses are in the system that are actually emergency room qualified. And I can tell you, which something else that really gives me pause is, as I'm traveling the province, as I'm talking to nurses, I meet more nurses that are emergency qualified that have left emergency, and they're working in other areas, not necessarily because it's easier, but like working in emergency in that kind of a pressure environment, throughout the pandemic and beyond, and really having, insufficient staffing resources has actually driven a lot of nurses away from emergency. And so we hope over time, once they see that ratios are, it's happening, we have a plan that will reattract nurses. It will sort of recruit them back to the area. But I am concerned we simply just do not have enough.
So to that end, I was going to ask you if there's any data on hiring and retention when it comes to, the result of that, the benefit of having a patient to nurse ratios in place.
Well, I can tell you where we have started to implement. 100% it's paying off. What we know is units that had high vacancy rates, even with having to add a number of lines to meet the ratio, those units, are usually, generally they don't have vacant lines. So that's a positive. We know in speaking with our members in terms of, what they're telling us anecdotally, they're saying things like, oh my goodness, like I'm actually able to give the care that patients require. So what we've done is we've sort of broken this work down into, roughly 3 phases. And in phase 1, where we've started implementation, or what we call is activation, is on the medical surgical units, rehabilitation units, focused care, which would be, sort of more of a specialized care, a telemetry unit would be an example of that, and an intensive care. So those are examples of where ratios have been implemented. And so, yes, we do have preliminary results. We do know that it's having a positive impact on patient care, and it's having a positive impact on nurses. The challenge is, because there's not enough nurses in the system, we might be able to staff units that have been activated, like people want to work there. What often happens is those nurses end up getting redeployed to areas that don't have staff. And so then they're no longer at ratio, right? And so the benefits are not realized.
A lot of issues around compliance with the ratios are collective bargaining issues for you. I'm wondering what you think of the way that Manitoba is looking at going about this so far through actual legislation.
I'm actually jealous. I'm competitive. I would like us, and I did challenge our government. We need to also be the first province, in my opinion, to achieve legislation. The path that we took was an agreement directly with government, a memorandum of understanding. In time, we may want to move it into our collective agreement. The challenge is what happens is then it gets costed against our agreement. And really, why should the nurses be funding this? Like, this is an investment that government needs to make. It is expensive. It does cost money. However, the savings that get realized over time make it all worth it. And I guess the other thing I would want to say is that, healthcare nursing is a safety critical industry, and yet it's not viewed that way. I mean, we have standards for all sorts of things. And yet in healthcare, it's just been like the Wild West. And, why would it make sense that, if you've had a surgical procedure in one province or one facility in a province, and, you're getting nursing care, 1 nurse to 4 patients, but in other areas it's 1 nurse to 15, like it makes no sense. And so I think, this is moving in the right direction. It's setting a minimum standard. And ultimately this is going to lead to better healthcare for, the citizens of whatever province. So I think this is great, and it's going to be a long journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's the good and it's the right work. And I'm really excited that BC and Manitoba are going to be on the right side of history on this one.
Adrienne Gear, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for the interview.
So if you want to read more about what is happening in Manitoba, this proposal, this new legislation that's proposed for nurse-to-patient ratios, and it actually is one piece of legislation. There's another proposal as well. Please read my colleague Bryce Hoy's reporting at cbc.ca/Manitoba. We've been in conversation this morning with Adrian Gear, who's the president of the British Columbia Nurses Union. It's 8:24 a.m. and we do now have some new music from Winnipegger Jacob Berdofsky, who announced his album Tell the Kids We Tried will be out this July. He has shared this single, though. This is Past Mistakes on 89.3 FM.
Waking up to all the frozen roads, the sun was hot, the sky was cold. Across the park where all the preteens hide, all bottled up and cast aside, like an iPod, like a landline, like an ashtray that hasn't coughed enough, like a swing set, like a necktie, like a big old house too small for all your stuff. House, he's got a chair he likes, beside the mini fridge with hockey lights, satellite to fight the morning gloom, oblivious and out of tune, like an uncle, like a headline, like pianos left in basements at your parents' place, like a sitcom, like a lawn sign, like the way we've learned to hide a friendly face. It's been so hard to feel hopeful. It's been so hard to look ahead. It's been so hard to say I'm sorry about before. It's been so hard getting out of bed, like an old dog, like a big fight, like the bad news that you still gotta break, like our dark days, like our long lives, like an annotated list of past mistakes, like an annotated list of past mistakes, like an annotated list of past mistakes.
That is new music from Winnipeg's Jacob Berdofsky, and it's called Past Mistakes. The new album out in July is called Tell the Kids We Tried, which Marjorie Dowhouse, I think, is pretty brave. Right?
We tried.
What are the other cuts on that album called?
Yeah.
We didn't mean to be so strict. Cut number 3.
I like it. Now you're going to make me want to look up the album and see what the other titles to the songs are.
Track 12. We should have paid you more allowance. All right, let's talk about what you have on your noon call in today.
Well, last week, as you recall, we asked people about how the price of gas might be affecting you. Of course, the war in the Middle East continues. That has a big effect on the price of energy. So we're going to ask you, because the price of gas is going up, it was $1.44 last week. Now it's north of $1.50. I think it keeps climbing.
Yep.
We're asking you if you would consider switching over to an electric vehicle. Also, keep in mind, too, that remember, as part of the deal, when Prime Minister Carney went to China in order to lower the tariffs on canola, they would allow a certain amount of Chinese EVs into the country. Some folks are considering it. We got some comments from people on our call-in last week about thinking about switching over to that hybrid or that electric vehicle. So we want to hear from you. Are you thinking about an electric vehicle in light of gas prices going up? Give us a call and share your thoughts coming up after 12:30.
All right. Thank you, Marge.
Thanks, Marcy.
Marjorie Dalhouse, the host of Radio Noon and the call-in on Radio Noon. And she's absolutely right. Gas, when you look at the averages today, are right around 149, 150, 151, even 153 I'm seeing here, and 154.9 at some spots in Winnipeg. Well, I want to thank those who worked on today's program. Today's edition of Information Radio was put together by associate producers Corey Funk and Sophia Peralta Barone, as well as producer Donna Carrero. In our news department, Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, Joni Nicolo, and Darren Bernhardt. Our live team, May McKillop, Sierra Sanders, and Darren Marash, and our producers in unit, Nellie Gonzalez, who's the show's producer in current affairs, and Leif Larson, who's the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. Thanks, everyone, for your work and for your work through the weekend to make sure the show gets on the air and is here for everybody on Monday morning and more. So if you believe that all good things must come to an end, then you're not watching traffic today, because we've had a great morning, start to end of the show. Still time to get in your traffic tip. Don't ruin it unless it's a big one. 788-3093. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. At least it's sunny. It's minus 20 right now. We are so far below seasonal for this time of year. We're climbing, though, to minus 12. The seasonal high is 0, and we will be up above that seasonal high by the middle of this week. The system behind wait time estimates at emergency departments has been giving the wrong data. In an internal memo last month to hospital staff across Winnipeg, it says there were multiple flaws making estimates quite inaccurate. Our health minister, Uzoma Esquire, says officials learned in recent months the predictions were based on very old data.
It's really, really important that we have predictive modeling that aligns with where we are in 2026, obviously, so that in Manitobans, like if a parent is checking wait times online before making the decision to bring their child to the hospital, they need to be able to trust that information.
The memo says multiple flaws have been addressed, including an unexplained problem that led to patients being undercounted at night. The Manitoba Nurses Union says it's not surprised the data was wrong. It says it's frontline workers who must deal with patients frustrated about having to wait longer than what is advertised. Manitoba's trade rep to the United States is making more money than the province initially disclosed. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Former CTV and CBC reporter Richard Madden was named Manitoba's trade envoy to Washington back in June. At the time, he touted his connections in the U.S. Capitol.
I've covered Washington for almost a decade, so I know the players. I've got a fairly decent Rolodex.
The province said in October Madden was making $387,000 a year. According to his contract, obtained by CBC News through a Freedom of Information request, Madden earns an annual consulting fee of $482,000. With expenses, his total compensation can reach $533,000. Amy Tuckett-McGimpsey, a spokesperson for Premier Rob Canoe, described the lower compensation figure for Madden provided in the fall as a base salary. PC leader Robbie Khan called this spending by the NDP government concerning.
How can they justify paying someone $500,000 a year when Manitobans can't pay their bills?
Richard Madden declined to comment. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba's Environment Branch is authorizing the city to kill ground squirrels with 2 pesticides. The city says the rodents dig holes, forcing a number of sports fields to close early for the season in recent years. Officials submitted an application to use a deadly bait and an asphyxiate foam. Both pesticides have been approved for 9 athletic fields this year. Biologist James Hare is disappointed with that decision.
It's just an agonizing and prolonged death that takes days. And of course, that leads to the second concern as well, that it ends up causing collateral damage to non-target species.
Hare says predators, birds, or pets that accidentally eat the bait or a squirrel's carcass can suffer from internal hemorrhaging. The province set a number of restrictions for the pesticides, including monitoring twice a day to make sure baits remain buried. Do you feel the difference in your wallet? Statistics Canada is out with its latest report on inflation. It shows the annual rate decreased to 1.8% in February. That is down from 2.3% the month before. That's nationally, and it attributes the decline in part to Ottawa's GST-HST tax holiday. That break a year ago helped take some steam out of the yearly price comparisons. Inflation in Manitoba also dipped in February to 2% from 2.6% the month before. Well, the Oscars were held in Hollywood last night to honor the best in film, and the black comedy action thriller One Battle After Another won Best Picture, and Canadians took home multiple Academy Awards.
Thank you, the fantastic city of Montreal. Thank you, Canada.
Montreal filmmakers Chris Lavis and Maciek Sherbowski won the award for Best Animated Short for The Girl Who Cried Pearls. And the Korean-Canadian filmmaker Maggie Kahn won Best Animated Feature for K-pop Demon Hunters.
And for those of you who look like me, I'm so sorry that it took us so long to see us in a movie like this. But it is here. And that means that the next generations don't have to go longing. This is for Korea and for Koreans everywhere.
And Toronto-based Jordan Samuel and Cleona Fury were part of the team that won the Oscar for Best Makeup and Hairstyling for their work on Frankenstein. Saskatchewan's Tamara Deverell and Nova Scotia's Shane Vio won the Oscar for the Best Production Design, also for Frankenstein. And the late Canadians Catherine O'Hara and Graham Greene were recognized during the memorial tribute. You can find more on the Oscars. You can also find more Manitoba news. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
And lots of feathers when it comes to the fashion last night, I noticed.
I saw a few myself, yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Let's get into a last look at our forecast here. As I mentioned, very similar conditions for Winnipeg, for Brandon, for Thompson. Everyone's daytime high is going to be around -12, -13. Lots of sunshine. Very cold and windy into tonight and tomorrow, and then snow coming. So 5 centimeters for Winnipeg, 5 to 10 coming for Brandon. Tomorrow, snow beginning early with local freezing rain. And then in Thompson tomorrow, you are also expecting to see some snow beginning in the morning, about 2 centimeters up north, a little bit less. -20 as we leave you. In Winnipeg, well below normal, as Heather mentioned as well. And in Brandon, clear -24, and Thompson -36. Let's just get through this week and see if we can get to the back half of March a little warmer. With a last quick look at I think a quiet drive is Sierra.
Yeah, it's been very quiet this morning, Marcy, so things are moving smoothly out there on your commute. But just a reminder to check Manitoba 511 if you're getting out on those highways, just for up-to-date conditions and any situations going on out there.
All right, thank you for the morning.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening, everyone. On behalf of our whole team here at Information Radio, we'll talk to you again tomorrow, right here on CBC. Stay tuned. The Current's coming up next on 89.3 FM. And Dr. Joss Reimer is going to be interviewed on The Current today. Of course, now the head of Medical Commission in Canada, but formerly here in Winnipeg.